We are recording.
Oh, it's just an internet connection.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Do you want to kick it off, Dean, or do you
Yeah. All right. Today's date is May 27th, 2025, and we're in Waterbury at an in-person staff meeting. First order of business is to approve, to review and then approve the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions on the posted agenda?
I didn't see him.
I need to delete the programming out of the SDMF. I still have not had a chance to research that, and I was going to reach out to the NIC folks.
Okay.
I had a brief discussion last week, but not a full one.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to approve the amended agenda would be in order. Thank you. Moved by Tom, seconded by Pat. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. And we'll jump right into Gary and Mark. Good morning, guys. Thank you for coming. Can you hear us okay?
Morning. Well, yes, we can hear you fine, Dean. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for having us. This will probably be pretty quick, I hope, unless you got a bunch of questions, but I think it's straightforward. So one of the things that's come up with more people going to parole is we've had more of an issue with individuals that have release requirements that are going directly to parole and individuals that typically require residence approval. And one of the things that we've decided to do is policy, which kind of makes sense, and I'm actually surprised we haven't done it earlier, is when we've historically approved a residence, the residence was treated almost like it was like the factors pertaining to the residence approval were specific to the residence, which it really wasn't true. It was really about who lives there, what are the circumstances, are there people there that shouldn't be there, are there weapons, that sort of thing. So moving forward and I've given this direction to the district managers, is that when a residence is approved for anybody that's got that condition, specifically with RSN and sex offenders, so anyone with a release notification requirement, we're requiring that staff go out and approve the residence as though it's a new residence if they've been incarcerated since that residence was last approved, because the circumstances have often changed. We find different people live there, and et cetera. One of the things that's come up recently when people are paroled with an approved residence requirement is we need some time to do that. Standard for us is 10 business days. Sometimes we can do it sooner. But what I was hoping we might be able to do to reduce confusion with the facility staff, with our staff, with the board, and frustration and all that with the parolee, would it be possible, if you can, with RSN cases, anybody with a release notification, is if we can give a 10-day period of time for staff to be able to get that residence approved, reviewed, and investigated and looked at before we release them to parole. So that's essentially what the ask is, and wanted to see if we could do that.
So Gary, are you looking at for the residence approval or for all the notifications to occur?
Well, what happens is now, because of the way RSN has been treated differently, I don't know how much you're aware of the new directive with release sensitive notification cases.
And that's what I was hoping you were going to talk about a little bit, because the board is a little confused over.
We know it's new, but we're not really fully aware of.
There's an increase, and I did provide them with a copy of the new directives.
Yep, sure. Yeah, and I can answer any questions about that. But basically, people with history, substantial history, that's essentially the gist of it. They're higher risk. They've had multiple bites of the apple. The direction from on high has been that we notify the governor's office and we send out notifications to law enforcement when folks are coming out. So we've been going through our entire population and just figuring out who meets the new criteria for release sensitive notification. And a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people that have been with the system for a while have that history, and typically around violence, sex, that sort of thing. And what's happening is there's a process now where everybody that is RSN gets centrally staffed, and this includes sex offenders as well. So it's kind of similar to how we used to do it with sex offenders, particularly high risk designated sex offenders who were RSN automatically. Is we have the case staffing, we have what's called an RSN executive summary, which is like a little case summary that just explains the history, the convictions, the risk, what the release plan is. We send that to the executive leadership team. Then they forward that along to the governor's office. And then once we get approval, and with a parole case, obviously it wouldn't be approval. It would just be notification. For Louise, it's approval. Once we get the go ahead on that, it goes up to the governor's office and they're notified. So along with that process of notification up the chain, would be doing the residence investigation. And the thinking would be that we could all do this within that 10-day period, and it would give staff time to get it done properly, make sure people are notified, answers are given if people have questions. So the idea is to do those things in tandem.
So Gary, when we grant somebody parole and we use that condition that the residence has to be approved, that there's no time limit set. So it's basically up to you to decide when that residence gets approved or not approved before they go out.
Right. Yeah, it's more of a messaging thing, I guess, in ensuring that they're aware that, it's going to take a few days for that to happen, because we've had confusion within our staff and with the parolee, people grieving or talking about grieving. I mean, it's sort of just making sure that everyone is aware that, it's going to take about 10 days. Typically we can do it within that time frame. So we figured if everyone just kind of knew that from the hearing on out, it would cause less confusion and issue.
And we can make it a practice that we don't send our parole agreements out. So that we can actually slow it back down like we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, for those that are incarcerated and RSN.
I think that would help. Yeah, that would help too.
And we can somehow work it into practice and messaging on our end as well, that for those RSN cases, we'll give the 10 business days and then the parole agreement will go out. But if somebody's not RSN and we don't have a condition 16, I don't see any reason to not see any reason to hold it unless you do.
No, I mean, it's really the RSN cases and the sex offenders. Those are essentially the ones that we just want to make sure that there's nobody's getting caught off guard. Particularly the governor's office, obviously they want to know about this. And I don't think it's as big a deal when we're not notifying law enforcement and other folks. We could simply just do the residence investigation if they require that and get taken care of, and they get out when they get out. I mean, letting them know if you're going to put the approved residence condition, letting them know that we do need a few, some times to do it. And these are usually pretty straightforward. It's not as often that we're denying the residences if we've known that there's a release coming or they've done release planning. Occasionally what happens is someone will just change the residence that they want approved all of a sudden. Maybe they didn't get into a program or something happened with the private residence, and we'll have to scramble to get a new one approved. In those cases, that could cause a little bit of a delay, but still, again, typically within 10 days, we can get that taken care of.
Are there any different criteria for RSN folks as opposed to what there has been? Yeah.
For the residents?
No, I'm just thinking because in the past we saw very few RSN cases.
Right.
It seems like we're seeing more, so I'm wondering if the criteria has changed.
Yeah, I couldn't even cite to you the previous language because it was really more, from memory, it was really more high notoriety. There were a lot of automatic ones, which are still automatic. So level C, if somebody got out on a level C, they would be risk containment. I'm sorry, they'd be RSN. High risk designation was RSN. The I would say it's just gotten broader and it's more based on their history. So, and it's meant to be kind of a bottleneck that we essentially are notifying folks so that there's less of a surprise if someone with a substantial history is getting out.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Tom?
Yeah, Gary, what, I know correction runs on statistics. What's the number of RSN cases now that are incarcerated? Do you have that? Is it, or a percentage?
I don't have it yet. It's still pretty new. The directive, as you probably all heard, just came out. So what I would imagine would happen is that we're going to run those statistics at the end of the year and see, how many do we have. I don't know if we have a report yet on that. It's an alert in the system. So we will theoretically be able to run one just like we do for all our other alerts. But I can certainly get that to, Dean or MJ both when we have that information.
As Dean said, though, we rarely had RSN cases, and now they're like every time. So
it's a lot. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it is.
But having the case staffing is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. You mean you get the parole board getting I agree. Yeah, it should explain to you our reasoning and all the considerations that were made.
Right. Good. Other thoughts or questions? I guess we're good.
All right. That was easy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good seeing you all. Take care.
Yeah,
reach out if you have any questions or any issues. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. And then there was Mark.
There wasn't.
He didn't say much.
I don't know if we want to have a little discussion on this or if we, I don't know if I haven't read all the policies yet.
I looked at it quickly and it was.
I will say that just about every release is going through a high level staffing at central office, not just by I think there's a staffing committee and then I think there's another committee. But before we get going.
Yeah, we should introduce our new member.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a little late. I got
That's
a little confused.
No problem.
It's confusing.
Well, why don't we just go
Now I know where it is.
Let's go around the room and introduce
Actually,
ourselves.
can we do it real quick?
Yeah.
So we found out last week that Angela
Shequin.
Shequin.
It's okay.
Was appointed to the board by the governor's office. Angela will be onboarding. We've got to go through all the necessary paperwork, as you all know. But I wanted to do that little introduction because I don't think everybody's quite heard. I think piecemeal people have heard that Angela was appointed.
Yeah.
So
cool. Good.
Before we do introductions.
All right. Well, there's all of our board here plus the 3 staff for the office. We have a total of 3.
Totally.
Big office. Colby, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Colby. I think my new title, I'm still not used to it, is parole board technician. I pushed the paperwork in the office with Parole.
Your PBI?
Yeah, I guess.
Copied a different job description and she got a job raise.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It's just I can't remember. I'm so used to it.
That's a good thing.
Executive office assistant.
The key is
I can tell you, this is how I introduce both you and Carla, is you're the administrative staff of the board.
There you go.
And so you don't have to get too technical in what your actual job title is.
Great. Wayne?
Dean George, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Pat Boucher, welcome.
Thank you. I know you.
Samantha Drake. I'm Carla. I'm the other administrative staff.
Tom Gifford, welcome.
Thank you.
Katie Aiken, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm Dean.
Yes.
Yes, great. Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So typically we try to have a monthly staff meeting. Some of them are held online via Teams and some we try to do in person, particularly in the summer months. So it gives us a chance to get together and bounce things off each other and catch up on things that have changed and things we need to address, that sort of thing. So we just had a briefing from, I'm not sure Gary's title now, but
Deputy Director of Field Services.
so a lot of times we'll have DOC present some information to us about what's going on there, just to keep us abreast of that. And then
Read my mind.
we typically have an agenda for the staff meeting to follow. And our next item up on the agenda is, well, maybe we'll let you introduce yourself to us. Yeah.
Well, I'm Angela.
Yeah.
I live in Essex. I am a small business owner. I own the Tipsy Pickle.
I followed the dish.
Prior to that, I worked for the chief medical examiner's office for a while. And then I most recently worked for the Shelburne Police Department as their administrator for 5 years. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. In a
Nice to
nutshell.
have you here.
Thank you.
Well, we're from all parts of the state. Pat lives in South Burlington, so she's,
Born and brought up in Essex, though.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I'm the furthest down
Yeah.
in Bennington.
Oh, Bennington. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big.
Tom's in Rutland.
Rutland. Yeah.
Sam's here in Barry.
Yep. Yep.
And MJ's in Barry. Wayne's up in the islands, Isle of Mont, and I live in Middlebury.
No, very well. Yeah,
A lot
all
of time
over.
in Essex, my relatives on the Bushy Farms there on River Road.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
Cool. All right.
So do we want to, as I stopped to did we want to digest any of what Gary said?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. I haven't had a chance to look at the policy change, but
I looked at it last night.
yeah.
And basically everybody's going to be RSN. I mean, if they have any history at all, they're going to be RSN
Why do you feel like this is coming down now?
because of the stuff that happened recently with the
Yeah.
case up in Northeast Kingdom.
So there was a case. It was the Harley Brewer case. It was all over the news. We had denied parole at his minimum. DOC was looking to release him to furlough to a very remote area up on the Canadian/New Hampshire border.
Wow.
There was a lot of public outcry. The governor's office issued some public safety order to DOC. We still have not gotten any confirmation of what was ordered. Lori and I have tried to figure out a little bit because we are going, wait a minute, we're a releasing entity too, but the governor's office is a true believer in our structured decision-making framework. So I think during all of this, if we can continue to ground ourselves in the SDMF as we're making our decisions, I think the better off we will be. I would recommend maybe reviewing the policies before next staff meeting. And then if there are questions, we could invite them back.
Mhm.
I know Lori couldn't make it today, but she is planning to come next staff meeting too, to answer any questions as well. I think that might be the best way is maybe digest it a little because I thought we were going to get more of an overview of risk
Yeah.
containment.
I did-
RSN, and we got basically the only thing we got was what Director Nault had asked for, which was the 10 days.
Which they really didn't need because they had to get their place approved before they were released anyway.
Well, but if the problem is if you don't, because we are going to have condition 16 conversations in a little bit. If you don't apply condition 16, they're still asking for the 10 days to do all the victim notification, all the release notification for these RSN cases.
But if they're not an RSN case, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
but-
Yeah.
I think we're going to find they're going to be few and far between.
I think you'll see.
One of the challenges that we're looking at is one of our conditions, and we set conditions when we grant parole, is a special condition that their residents must be approved by the department before they are released, which can end up taking months.
Oh.
And so what they're changing is their policy for notification of these serious cases. And looking to approve those residences is probably going to take even longer, I suspect. So we look at the case and then we try to determine whether or not an approved residence is really necessary because it does hold people back from getting released sometimes for many months.
Yeah.
And that's the pushback we get. Obviously, if we don't approve the residence and things go bad, it comes back to us to explain and that kind of thing. But when we do use that condition, which is in a lot of cases because of the housing shortage and the challenges with approving a residence, many times people will wait many months to get released.
Looks like the whole room would be case staff to be RSN.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. If you have any history, was think of the ones we've seen in the last
Yeah. Oh,
few
yeah.
months. They've been
Mhm.
many times before the board and
Yeah.
over the years. So I don't know how it's going to impact how many people we see or how long. At their minimum, I mean, it's going to be a lot of work for the corrections and
Yeah.
to make sure the case staff and all the RS when it goes on with the RSN.
Sure.
I've been hearing a lot of frustration from some long-term DOC staff, supervisors, just of kind of the backpedal that DOC is doing.
Can we ask them to come back at a staff meeting? Doesn't have to be next month to do an overview of like
Yeah.
the RSN and all that stuff
Yeah.
that we just talked about.
Oh, sure.
I asked once, I'll ask again, I'll keep asking, I'll even get Lori on it.
I
Yeah,
was
we will keep
surprised they
asking.
didn't have the number because they know what the number is going to be.
I can find out,
Yeah, I know.
I can find out the number, I can run the
I bet it's going to
report.
be 2/3.
But the problem,
Really?
Yeah.
the problem is they haven't case staffed everybody yet.
Yep.
And in the process, it's not just RSN, they're also doing risk containment. Because the one thing, so we've got RSN running and we've got risk containment running kind of on the same train together. Risk containment took over level C. And now for risk containment, I don't remember the criteria, but there's no longer a need for the violence risk assessment, the VRAG, to be completed because they were finding that the VRAG wasn't necessarily applying to some of these cases. So I think we've got to do a deep dive into risk containment as well, because I think we're going to start seeing more risk containment cases where they're going to be reviewed every year and not release eligible for until like 6 months prior to their max.
So they're not always using the VRAG then?
No, they're not. There's new criteria for risk containment. And I don't know. I can pull it up. I don't know off the top of my head what it is. I did review them. I got a little discouraged the first time I reviewed them.
But that's also discouraging because we had you have a 15 to life sentence, you're level C, no program.
Right.
I mean, then what? So you stay in jail for 50, 60 years? That designation?
Well,
And
they did away with the level designations, but
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's risk containment
containment.
or
yeah.
RRP eligible. I am going to see if I can get the RRP folks in for June as well to go over RRP.
That would tie in nicely too with us doing another review of the risk assessments
Yep.
for everybody.
And I can try to find, I can't remember if Brian Lovin sent us a PowerPoint or the ORAS or not. I can try to find that.
I would love to see the actual risk assessment
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't. It's not,
I just want to pick it out, pick it apart. Like, are you really looking at what you should be looking
it's proprietary and they're trained in it and it's something they've purchased and it's not for us to determine.
at?
Oh.
So all we
If
get
we
is
want-
for.
If we want to, or,
We can understand it.
yeah, we can understand each section of it.
Yeah, that would be.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but we can't pick apart all the questions and what's being asked.
Shoot.
I know, Katie.
You know, you should have talked to, remember Cynthia at the conference?
Cindy
with
Mauser.
Richard?
Yes.
She was actually part of the team that
Really?
developed the ORAS from Ohio.
Oh,
Nice to know that now, huh?
yes. I'm like, all right, tell me what your
Yeah.
thinking was on this.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It's used throughout the country.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not just an isolated one for Ohio. I think the University of Ohio or Cincinnati somewhere developed it. And then it's different states have adopted it and maybe tailored it to their populations. And then they're also, as Kathy Aston-Borski was here a couple months ago, they are now moving away from the ORAS for the women
Right.
into the WERNA.
Right.
So I'll look to see.
Which
if
I
can
was
find
really
that
happy to see.
PowerPoint.
They took more of a trauma look
Mhm.
from trauma aspect of it when they did the women's assessments, which I thought was great.
So in our packets, when we get a parole summary. Included is a risk assessment score, and there's a whole bunch of different tools that are used to get that score. So we would typically know if they're low risk, moderate risk, or high risk, and then try to gear things according to that. But I think it would be good to review those.
Yeah, I'll see if I
Tools
can
again.
find that PowerPoint. If
Yeah.
not, I'll see who I can get over here to kind of give an overview.
Anything else on RSN? DOC? Early termination for sex offenders. Tom, you had some thoughts on that.
I singled you out because you brought this
That's good. I can take
You
it.
brought this up.
We had a case a month ago, and I haven't seen that early termination for. Were you on that with me, Pat?
Yes.
Yeah, for sex offenders, and he really didn't qualify for early release, in my opinion, anyway, with all the stuff he had. But
Yeah.
I was just surprised to see them bringing it forth because I don't know if it's there at the DOC unwritten rule or is it a policy, but I was kind of surprised to see a sex offender for early termination, and I just didn't.
I can't recall ever seeing
This
it.
first one I've ever seen, and I said, in looking at it, I was not. I think he was maxing out. Like Pat, when was it?
He was within 6 months.
Yeah, he was in 6 months,
Oh,
but
Oh, that was my next question.
Yeah,
How
he
close
was
was he?
close.
but there was stuff in that he had not. I mean, he was not a stellar
Yeah.
person for release.
What did you end up doing?
No, we did not.
Okay.
We didn't do it.
What was their reasoning?
He was 6 months to his minimum, and he was doing pretty well.
Pretty well.
Pretty well.
And there,
Okay.
Pretty well.
I had not seen one. I didn't know if there was a policy or corrections, and I talked to MJ. She did the same thing. I have never had one before. I don't know if this is something that's
I don't
coming
think,
down the
It
pipe.
was always my understanding that DOC would not recommend recommend early discharge for a sex offender.
That is surprising.
So if it comes up again, do we want to just look at each case, or are we?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if they're within 6 months, our policy is to hear the case. If it's beyond that, then we'll review it at a staff meeting and go forward from there.
Again, like I
He
said,
wasn't a good candidate.
no, he was not the poster
Not at all.
child for
No.
this candidate. No,
You just didn't feel like supervising it anymore?
I don't know why. I don't
know.
think I got a feeling his supervisor didn't know that he did it. It's my gut feeling.
Really?
Well, that's the curious thing is sometimes you get the request from the individual themselves and not their supervising parole officer, but we still look at it. Yeah.
They don't have to sign off on that before they.
No, I don't know this. I don't know the written policy. I don't
I think they're supposed to review them.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be for a sex offender. It's supposed to be a case staffing or something, a review.
I
I
know.
imagine the supervisor would have, I would think you would have to at least look at it before they.
I would hope so.
We
Me
always
too.
put them on the spot and ask them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really, that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I got it. If we get but since you haven't had one, and I only had
Yeah.
one, so I guess
Can't think of one.
okay, that kind of helps our problem. Unless this could be a new policy with correction, which I doubt with the new.
No, I think it was just a one-off that, because I usually get asked by a staff member what our stance is on
Yeah.
early termination around sex offenders, and that's why I wanted to I thought along with that topic, at some point, I don't know if it's worth just reviewing our early termination policy again. Because we've had it in effect for a few years, and why not just talk about it? Maybe bring the numbers and so forth. I don't think that a lot will. I think we'll be seeing less coming forward, potentially. Not the 6 months, the listeds.
Yeah.
I think the listeds, but we have a very high bar for those cases anyway.
But it's good if there is anyone that and I think we've got one coming out too, don't we? This one.
Yep.
Max is in 2028 or something. Yeah.
Yep.
So Angela, the board has the statute authority to grant early discharge, so we can end someone's sentence. We determine it's appropriate. So we have a policy in our policy manual that says essentially if they're within 6 months, they're doing well, they're parole officer can recommend them. If it's beyond 6 months, then it has to be some other criteria that we put in.
As is the next one.
This is the next one. Joshua McAllister. Everybody had a chance to review that?
Yes.
If you need me to pull anything up, let me know.
I looked at it, but if you could.
He had a lot of bumps in the road before his last couple.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That was
trying to
that.
refresh my memory
Give me a
completely.
second,
Like,
I'm getting there.
He's done pretty well.
Still doesn't come up.
He was non-listed and
Even though I'm on the internet, it won't come up
Oh,
on.
mine finally came up.
Your global protect might not be
Yeah,
Yeah,
connected. You may have to go down and find the icon and connect.
that's what I ended up doing, Dean.
okay. We can do that.
I don't remember what the original offense is.
heroin, I believe.
Yeah, his max is 28.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2028.
So it looks like he's a non-listed offender.
Yeah.
Yep.
His last offense was in 2015 or 2017, I guess.
Went off the wagon a few times.
Yeah. Still going to treatment.
Yep.
Yeah, I do remember there being a couple relapses.
Tested positive for alcohol in 23, but nothing at all since then.
Wait a minute. If
Wait a minute.
it's 23,
Positive for alcohol 23, yes.
Positive for alcohol in 20.
that's, so non-listed needs to be 3 years incident free.
Mhm.
So would we consider that I just want to throw it out there. Would we consider that an
What is-
incident?
Didn't have any other alcohol. He had drug related offenses, but not alcohol. But I don't know.
So I just want to throw that out there.
I would say not.
I don't have an issue with
Is
it.
it testing positive for alcohol once and is that
Yeah, it
an
was-
incident?
Well,
And what does that mean?
So that's
Yeah.
no,
my
I'm
question.
just asking.
I know, what does corrections consider an incident?
No, that's our
I know what's
policy.
incident mean for us.
Yeah.
They went to check on him and he tested
Right, so
positive.
the incident is what I mean. Is it a new charge?
So he does have a no alcohol, so he does have a no alcohol condition, so there must have been alcohol involved somehow.
Yeah,
So I'm just throwing that out
Yeah.
there. I wanted to look at his actual parole agreement to see, because if it was just drugs, we wouldn't have put the alcohol condition
Right.
on.
Is there a incident report
I don't know, I
to
don't,
the alcohol?
I don't,
Well, it was Savita tested him and he tested positive at Savita.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
He went in for his
Was he a
dosing.
.0009 because he just
Oh,
gargled
the
with
exact numbers?
Laboris, or was he dead drunk?
Or what's the policy for
I
incident?
need to know a little bit more about he tested
I
positive.
don't know.
we left it vague like that on purpose,
Okay.
I believe.
left what on purpose?
Incident, I mean, that's all.
What an incident means
Yes.
Incident
in
means
our
an
early
alcohol
discharge policy.
Could mean
We
anything.
can certainly ask him about it at the hearing too,
I'm sharing if I'm gonna
if you
go
want
on.
to.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so the hearing, I mean, one incident, whatever that is, I would.
Yeah.
No, there's an outage. I don't know
If
if
you're
I can
looking
get on
for
or
a
not.
motion, I'll make the motion that we see him.
Okay.
That's it.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I think we should at least see him.
That's a pretty good track record for a
Yeah, still
McAllister.
doing treatment too at the end.
If he's a, with
He paid off his
McAllister.
restitution.
He has paid it off.
He paid off, I know he paid his restitution.
Yes, he paid his restitution.
That's
Yes, he did. I would, God forbid, we wouldn't want to do that. Okay. All right. I get a motion and a second there, Dean.
Okay. We all set with discussion on this? So I have a motion and a second to schedule a hearing for Mr. McAllister for early termination. Any further discussion? Favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. McAllister is on.
I won't be ours.
Okay.
Well, that alcohol use wasn't even
But-
listed as a violation to
Yeah.
grad sanction
That's
him.
right. All right.
It was just, it came about through his Savita test.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was just
Yeah.
looking to see
Yeah.
if they gave him like a grad sanction or
He
something.
just-
Must be
Nothing.
on the MAP program.
The last
Yeah.
thing in here is from 2019.
Okay, let's move on to conditions and wrap that up today.
I don't know if we will or not.
There's no wrapping to be done.
Yes, there will be. So, condition 16, the working group. Do you want to
Sure.
go through what you've got for us? Okay.
Well, I'll start and I'll let the guys chime in as they
Sounds like we're
want.
gonna have a full conversation by all of us.
Huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
No, we each took different states
yeah.
and we researched what the different states do around condition number 16. The states that I have, Florida, Maine, and I think Ohio. Can't remember now. But
Maine doesn't have parole.
no, they don't. But I didn't know that until I got
Okay.
into it. But the general consensus is that if they don't have housing, they don't get parole.
Mhm.
Florida will give you parole without a residence, but if you're caught sleeping on public property, they'll arrest you. So
Really?
If you're on parole
if
and you're
on
sleeping.
parole and you're sleeping in the park, like
Yeah.
in Burlington,
Yeah,
they can arrest you and fine
as a
you.
violation of parole.
You're not allowed to be out on public property. You have to.
Well, that would clean up Church Street pretty well, wouldn't
Tell
it?
you.
If they're on
But-
parole.
Tom or Wayne,
No, same, I mean, we all found the same thing. Majority or all the states require housing. But I think the thing that we all remarked on was everybody's answer to our question when we peeled back the next layer of onion. We have a plethora
Yeah.
of resources. It's like, which one do we want to send them to?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was just
they all
a
have
pile of-
agencies to help these people.
Well, here's the other question is, do they require an approved residence for everyone that goes out on parole?
Yes.
Yes.
Which we don't.
Right. Right, and they do.
Oh,
Did
Massachusetts
anybody
was
do New York?
fascinating because
Somebody did New York.
I did New York.
You did New
Because
York.
they just let somebody out on
What
domiciled.
New York does, and I could talk to, they ended up mostly dealing in New York City. If you make parole and you have no housing, which is unusual, by the way, for New York,
Yeah, we just had one.
they have this homeless group that takes the person into this program, and it's a very large program. I mean, we was talking. I mean, I don't know, but it was very big. They will assist you in getting housing, so you're paroled to this program,
Okay.
and they I imagine like a giant homeless shelter. And if you don't get a housing, you stay there till you max in this program. Massachusetts, when you get released, they have 2 plans automatically for you. They have so many resources.
Mhm.
The number of people that are released without housing, I think the way they were talking would be minuscule. Probably would be like less than 0.5% the way they're talking. But they were all adamant, including Connecticut. They will not release anybody without housing. And I'm thinking we were talking in our group, so one of our tasks is public safety. Are we doing the public safety? If we release somebody who's going to go to the mission or go someplace that has no housing, is that appropriate? And one of the things we talked about, and that's one of my things, I think I sent it to you too, was
Mhm.
if they don't have housing, maybe we shouldn't parole them, let the corrections with furlough or whatever the program they're going to have. But when I talked, Massachusetts, in fact, they will be contacting you because they want to do the remote parole board. We had a lot of discussion on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But they were incredulous, saying that we would never do that, ever.
Never release him without an approved.
No. And the ones they had were pretty bad ones. He didn't give the details. But I could tell there were a lot of other issues. Still, the ones that had, I'm assuming they were probably sex offenders or murderer, like really high profile kind of thing. But they were adamant, absolutely not. So
It was interesting.
Yeah, well, I was.
So what is your recommendation for condition 16?
Keep it.
Yeah, but I mean, change the language at all, leave the language as we proposed. Remember, we eliminated employment.
Right.
I thought our goal was I thought the goal of the work group was not to keep it or get rid of it, but it was to update, to try to draft some
Guidance.
guidance on
Guidance.
how to apply the condition. I thought that was the goal of the three of you.
Well, one of the things that struck me as we were wrestling with this is it's a hair split. Because once we start doing something to tweak our policy, we're interfering with DOC. And I understand we're two separate entities, but I mean, we could probably get a lot of people out the door if DOC changed some of their approval policy, but we have no control over that. So it's just like,
Right.
it's a real hard issue to do anything with ours other than say, shall be released to approve housing. Boom, done, simple.
But in many cases, Wayne, we've got people that are with low-level offenses, I should say, who have got permanent residences to go to. And DOC has no problem with that, so that condition really doesn't apply. So why put it on them?
I mean, I would take a McAllister.
Mm-hmm.
With that, well, what I'm seeing here for a criminal history right here,
Right.
no way for a 16.
Yeah.
I mean, drug and substance abuse offense, I don't see that as public safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at the big picture, yes, it is, but it's not a crime of violence. It's a personal crime. As far as weapons in the house, I mean, that's one of my things. Weapons, alcohol, they're in every house in the state.
Yeah.
So if we got a nonviolent offender, why do we worry about that? But then correction says, we're not going there. They got barking dogs. There's guns in the house. There was 2 beers in the refrigerator. So we're back at
Yeah,
square
no, I
one
get
again.
that. Yeah.
So can I go back and read what we had?
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to put us right back to, let's look at the application and how because we're challenged on this so often by all sides. So before it said appropriate use of this condition for the following offenders for whom a transitional housing or residential treatment need has been determined through the staffing process, sex offenders with contact offenses, moderate to high risk offenders on supervision for interpersonal partner violence in which there are increased victim concerns in the absence of this in the absence of this restriction, offenders who score high on any validated risk assessment instrument or assessment, moderate to high risk offenders who identified victims deemed a risk to abscond due to absconding escape history, or offenders who do not meet the above criteria, but for whom there is a specific credible concern to public safety in the absence of this restriction. So that's what we had.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the three of you looked at what we had to potentially tweak that at all. Are we, when we're applying condition 16 or taking condition 16 off, are we using any of this? Are we looking at the risk assessment scores? I'm just trying to get a feel of how you're all making that determination, whether we should keep 16 on or take it off. I mean, some of them are obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know if all of them are
I
obvious.
think by and large, if they're requesting condition 16, for the most part, supporting it. We may push back and ask, well, what are these other options? Because a lot of times they'll come up in the interview, as you know, that, I can live with my uncle or I can live here or whatever. And we'll get an explanation as to whether that's appropriate or not, or we'll look into it. And then the other side of it is some of the violation outcomes. You've got the therapeutic works group that will put together a plan which includes a residence that DOC may not support. So then we have to decide if this makes sense to go forward with it or not.
Right. And in those cases, we can't approve that. We don't want to get in the approval business. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. We don't want to get in the approval business, but
That's what I'm saying.
in those cases, we'd have to remove 16
Yes.
if there was
Right.
a plan.
Yeah.
So I just want to
Yes.
have the conversation as a whole,
Yeah.
because I don't have the data, but I have a feeling now that we're paroling more out of the incarcerated population, most of those probably have 16, just
Yeah.
seeing how many are still being held for lack of residence.
Well, to keep the parole board out of it, like I mentioned it to Dean, I said, they don't have a residence or approvable residence, then they go on to the corrections docket, not the parole board docket.
Which is not really the flavor
No,
of
I
justice
know.
reinvestment at all.
I know.
Well, in those cases though, Tom, we can
The old flavor of
we
the
can
board.
Yeah.
grant it. It's just that they're not going to actually physically go on parole until they have that residence. And
But is that fair?
And then that's, it goes back to.
well, it doesn't
Jay's
change
thing with
anything really from where they would be if we didn't grant it.
And it's not changing anything from what we're doing right now.
that. Right,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
The
Yeah.
DOC is
But-
not gonna let them out without an approved
I
residence
know,
on furlough,
but they're
so what's
on-
the difference?
Because they've got the designation of being on parole.
Not until they sign that parole agreement though.
Yeah.
So they're still on.
So it would be
Right,
potentially a
but we
rescission, but
Paroled them,
Right, but
But-
they're still incarcerated, they're still
Right.
getting their earned time, they're
Yeah.
still, everything's still lined, everything, they're still the same status that they were. They've just been granted parole and they know they can work to get out if they have an approved
and
residence,
sometimes we'll
which is what is happening now.
we'll have a discussion about a proposed residence that hasn't been checked on yet or something like that in our conversation with them. And that's a good thing. They can follow up on
should
that.
we be absolutely sure of their residence before we grant them parole?
Why?
So they're not sitting incarcerated. Technically, we've granted them parole. They haven't signed their parole
Except that
papers,
if we approve parole and we have that condition, presumably they're going to start working
but working
on
harder.
getting them out. And we follow up on that with,
I think
Yeah.
part of your SDMF process with your release plan is to question about the residents.
Mhm.
And I
We
think,
do.
well, I think sometimes we don't question, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I think sometimes we don't dig into, sometimes we dig into all the options, but sometimes we don't when we just hear, oh, DOC, they're on this waiting list, this
Yeah.
waiting list, this
Right.
waiting list. But I don't
You're
think
right.
sometimes we,
You're right.
that we could, the board comes back and goes, okay, is this transitional housing the only option that you have? Or is this the release plan that has been agreed upon between you and
No,
DOC?
You're right. You're right. When I see they have pathways, how pending, I don't really dig it. You're absolutely right.
No,
And is that parole board's issue or is that the caseworker's issue to help this guy find alternatives? Not us to drill down and suggest to him to have the caseworker say, oh, well, we'll get on that another month from now.
But that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is during your initial interview, just having that open conversation about what do you have any other resources
Mm.
or why did you pick to go on the pathways waiting list?
yeah,
or
sometimes
why-
it's important for them to be in pathways.
Right,
transitional housing.
absolutely.
Like if there's substance use
Right.
concerns.
And that's why we should look at it as the CSJs and everything else. It's a better place than like living at the mission.
No, absolutely.
But you're right. I don't think I've
Looking
ever.
at it, a holistic
Yeah.
view of the whole case.
Yeah.
I think that was something that I was reminded in some of the conversations that I heard last week is just looking at the whole case and looking at the individual and all the resources available. Because the individual may have a place to go, but they're not going to bring it up to you because DOC's already told them there's no way you're going there.
Yeah, that's a good
Very good point. That I
one to follow
never.
up on.
Do you have a backup plan?
Yeah.
Well, and we had a really interesting one very recently, which simply on the condition 16 that he was asking for it to be removed.
Right.
It almost felt like there was like a threat to it where you either take this off or I'm revoking, I'm, you know,
And we did take it off.
taking on, I don't want parole anymore and I'm going to do, it's almost like that felt very much like we were in the approval business for DOC at that
But
point.
he had an
because-
option.
Yeah, he did have a good plan.
So it felt like
Yeah.
it was a really tough thing to try to decide because like, well, do we, but there was a good housing plan, but
But the downside to that case
it's
too,
almost like
Katie,
he was
was
calling their bluff.
he was gonna
with
max
DOC.
out in about, 6 or 8 months? So he would have just
Yeah.
remained incarcerated without any transition
Right.
support. And he mentioned that as well.
Yep.
And
I wonder, I got very curious after the fact about how was there going to be anything coming back from DOC on that, on what we decided on that, like how they were going to react to that, us removing that
We
condition.
didn't get anything on that one.
But that was a tough one, especially when he was kind of like dangling that over our head of you either remove it or we're
It's kind of
we're
aggressive.
rescinding.
But I had that twice in the last 2 weeks where somebody
Oh, really?
wanted to revoke their parole and rescind their parole because we didn't remove 16.
Yeah.
Because last week it happened with Pat, Tom, and I, and then I had it with you guys. I think it just,
Is that going to start happening more?
Well, he had a long max, so I
I don't
was
know if it's a
surprised.
right now conversation, but I think we're gonna see it more because they also get their good time.
Especially in the
If
work
they-
camp
If they
where,
rescind it, they get
Yeah.
their good time. Why would you not?
yeah.
I am working with Lori. That's a different, I am working with Lori about a voluntary withdrawal from parole. So they can get their earned time. That's something I think we need to push harder
yeah,
next legislative session around earned time.
to make clear that
But sorry. I didn't mean to
No, you're
interrupt.
fine.
I think the differences with the cases that I had with both of those was the case that we had last week was his history was
Mhm.
20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
not, it wasn't a one and
He
done.
wasn't a
Right.
Boy Scout, as Dean would say, right?
hmm And he, couldn't go back to CJC because he owed them money for damage. Like he couldn't, he
Couldn't do
he
business
kind of.
Burned all his
right.
bridges.
Yeah.
I would
So-
say sorry, Sam.
No, you're fine.
I would say don't take into a fact that they want to withdraw from parole. Don't use that as a factor in your determination. That I think is just them talking. And that's something, if they want to withdraw from parole, they can withdraw from parole. There's nothing saying we need to keep them on parole. I think I wouldn't put a lot of weight in that. I put more weight in what is the residence that they are
right.
presenting to you and what is use all of their factors to say, is this something that is going to work for the person? If it's not going to work,
Yeah.
Well,
The one
he had
that,
a couch. He had a couch
Yeah.
that his brother would let him stay on for a limited period of time.
Yeah.
Getting corrected.
but he didn't give us an alternative. It was after the hearing that he said he wanted to withdraw.
Right.
He didn't dangle that in front of
right?
us.
Oh, no, that was
This
the
other
one
guy
that-
did. This
Well, and
other
I
guy
didn't put any weight into that part of it, but that's the first time I had ever
Yeah.
been
But-
like, if
But
you don't
when
do
look at
this, I'm
that
going to
case,
do this.
Katie, too, it made sense for him. I mean, he was gonna cut the remainder of his sentence in
Right.
half by
Right.
rescinding his parole.
And
And he didn't want to rescind. He wanted to
Right.
go out on parole.
Right.
it kind of made me
Hmm.
wonder why DOC was fighting it so hard.
I know.
I couldn't
Didn't make
quite
sense.
understand that.
So I
And
think we made
but
a
it-
good decision on that.
it did feel like it was kind of
Yeah.
like we were sort of like us versus DOC and sort of like, no, we're going to overrule your decision and that like the approval business. Of
And I think
the
this
housing.
is what's going to happen a lot, and that's why I was hoping maybe we could nail down the criteria a little bit, because I think this is kind of where we're at with the approved residents, and I think with the higher RSN cases, the higher risk containment cases, they're looking at everything with a very small lens now,
Yeah.
and they're going to be really, from my gut, they're going to be really strict on their approval process and what they're going to do. So that's why I keep circling back to this, that I think it's very important that we have some kind of guidance philosophy that the board is going to follow to do this.
Yeah.
Because I think if we can state to DOC, this is our philosophy,
Mhm.
and to the parolees, then everybody's on the same page. Because if we don't come up with a philosophy, then they're not going to know. And what I always hear is, well, depends on the flavor of the day, depends on which 3 board members I've got today about what I've got. And I do have attorneys who sometimes will ask me so they know how to prepare for you all.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
They will ask us sometimes who's sitting on the boards, because it depends on which 3 of you are sitting together.
Huh.
Sometimes I will say
Well,
consistency.
I'd like to know what they, I'd
we're
like to know their
individuals.
thinking
I
on
like
each one of
I
like
like
how
some
they
I
view
like-
us.
that we have some consistency and some philosophy that we can message out, I think it helps.
The
But
problem is we're individuals.
That, I guess I'm looking at the condition 16. When it's recommended by DOC, they typically have an explanation as to why.
That's why.
And then it's up to us to determine from that if that makes sense or not. And most times it does, but there are cases where
Yeah.
we're going to need to overrule that.
but what are
I
the
don't think
facts?
you can do the what ifs on every.
Well, I'm not asking for the what ifs, and I'm asking more for what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I think that to what, like Pat just said, you're all individuals. So what makes sense to Pat may not make sense to you, Dean, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Mhm.
So, and same thing around the room. So what does make sense?
Well, I'm thinking about my history and having done checks. Do I want to prove a resident that has vicious dogs that won't let me? Do I care about alcohol in the refrigerator? Probably not. Do I care about guns? That was always a big thing with
Yeah.
corrections.
Hmm.
So you're looking at the people who have to do the approval, who have to go in there and check on these guys. There's also a safety part of this when they put the 16 on, or if they know that it's a drug house. We don't approve drug. We haven't been doing that.
Right.
So I mean, there's so many variables for each case. I don't know if I know what you're saying though. Is that we all are. I'm sure if I was a PO, I'd be looking who's on the board, seeing who I'd be dealing with.
But with the condition 16, when they recommend it, typically it's because they want them to go into transitional housing somewhere. And
Just a little
they need to explain that to
Well,
us.
they
And
want
if
them to have
during the
stability.
hearing, if we explore other options and they haven't checked on them, there's nothing wrong with asking DOC to check on that as an option if they're not going to get out into transitional housing for 6 months. Or if they want to go to residential treatment, they got to have a residence to get into residential treatment.
No easy answer.
No.
Well, again, there's the resources that we don't have.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
there is a challenge there. So I don't know if we really want to change any of the applications in that condition.
We like the applications that were on here.
Okay, good. I think the main thing was to eliminate the employment as a
Yes,
requirement.
and we don't really factor that in anymore,
Right.
before we did.
Do all the applications make sense? Do they need tweaking? I figure
Yeah.
if we're doing this, let's do it.
So
We thought they made sense.
MJ, the document that you put in,
Yeah.
mine anyway, ends with condition 15, sex offenses.
Yep, that's a separate section. If you go up on page 3, it has all the other conditions. It starts with page 1, 2, and 3. I can put it up on the screen if you'd like.
I'll find it.
I've only got page 1, I guess.
What do you have?
Oh, I've got this.
Yep, that's page 1, page 2, page 3.
Okay, it ends with 15.
Yeah, all the sex offense
Okay, I
conditions.
got it. on
okay.
page 3. Yeah.
Okay.
They're just separated out into their own section. Same with the DV,
Oh,
which we're
okay.
getting rid of the
Got
DV
it.
condition. I have not updated this condition guidance document because we haven't really taken a chance to look at this document.
I think the application makes sense the way it's written.
Yep. And from all the research that we did, they made sense to us.
Being part of Parole on Parole is also trying to be successful. Are we being successful when you're saying, let it release a guy or girl that has no resources and could be living in a drug house known to the corrections? And, it comes to a point, we get them out of jail, but is that the appropriate place
Yeah.
for them
Right.
for success? So,
It isn't.
or like I said, when Lori said we can let them live with the mission, I bit my tongue on that because I said, is that really successful to have somebody living at the Mission? You know, and I don't think it is, but stable housing is part of, but maybe I'm sure the people you guys talk to, that says stable housing is the cornerstone to having them
Success.
being
Yeah.
not coming
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it in terms of, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
If you want them to achieve overall well-being, they have to get those basic needs met first. But the housing that sort of always concerns me is the housing that gets approved because it is a safe house, but a lot of times it's someone who might be very enabling. So they're going to blow out of there pretty quickly.
But I had a case,
That's the housing that gets approved that
in
concerns
another
me.
life, I worked with mental health, and one of the things was, and I was, one of the directors drove me up by my ankle straps because I wasn't happy with this, because she goes, whose morals are going to use, yours or mine?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always remember that conversation. I learned very young, and I said, you're right.
Yeah.
My morals should not be, so somebody's enabling.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Who's more?
Well, I think of it in terms of like, for two reasons. One of them being, what is the fact that this person, whether it's a parent, whoever, may have been very enabling in the past, what's that going to do to their quality of life having them there? And then also, what is the risk? Is it how much easier it's going to be for that person to then, you know, go back to using substances or commit a new crime, or because that person may be easily manipulated to not tell, and then what is the public risk there too? So that one I always get a little bit leery on, but
Leave it the way it is.
I think so. Any other thoughts on changing anything?
Ask the governor, gives a few shekels for halfway house, or have corrections start having apartments again. But that would be helpful.
It would.
So MJ, do you have the latest version then that would include
Of
the
the
other
conditions?
changes?
I have the condition, I put the conditions in the folder. I have not updated the guidance document because I didn't know if any
Yeah.
changes were going to be made to any of it. I don't know if anybody reviewed but the revised chapter 11 is what we talked about at the last meeting
Mhm.
with the new
Mhm.
conditions and putting some philosophy into the conditions in condition setting as well up at the top, because we didn't really have a lot of philosophy. But I think what is here is what we've talked about at previous meetings and approved upon,
Bless you.
including the updated condition modification process.
Woo.
Bless
Bless you.
Mhm.
You're allergic to us?
Yeah. I'm allergic to condition 16.
You have stable housing now. You're safe.
Yeah.
Barely.
Two of them.
So this is the conditions we're using now, though. It's in.
No, it is not. What are you talking about? In the
Okay.
guidance document, or which one? I'm looking at revised chapter 11, so I'm a little. Are you in the conditions guidance document or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
It's
not.
okay.
I was in the revised chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, that just needs to be updated too.
Right.
There's not a lot of updating
No,
to
there
do.
isn't.
But I didn't want to update it until I knew for sure
Right.
where we're headed, if we were even keeping the guidance document. Because at one
Well, I
time
think
you were
that's good.
saying it was DOC's, not ours, and I thought it was ours.
I don't mind us having the applications there. I think that's good background information.
And you want to keep it as like an appendix, like a separate technical guide, or do you want to build it into our policies?
I think we should build it into the policies.
Okay. I can do that.
Okay.
I can put application.
makes it more
I can-
transparent.
Yeah, it does.
So I would suggest looking at potentially a July 1st effective date, start off with the fiscal year.
Okay.
And then I bring this back with the application built in for one last final review at the end of the June meeting.
Yep.
That way I can get the offender management system updated and our paperwork updated. And I think we may be getting asked to redo all the parole agreements this time where we didn't last time.
Hmm.
Because it's hard to manage violations in the new way they're doing
Yeah.
it when not everybody's on the same set of conditions.
Mhm.
So we're having that problem now.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Good then, thank you.
So shall I have one?
I mean, we can the conditions aren't drastically different.
No,
I mean, condition 11 is basically not being used now anyway, once in a while. So,
right, and it changes the domestic violence more than
right.
anything.
And
Yeah.
we can stop using those too and just
Yeah.
put on
Yeah.
the victim as an 18.
Good, okay. PC bail hearing overview?
I think this was put on, Pat Dean and I have been meeting monthly just to talk about chair issues, probable cause bail hearing issues, because they're doing the probable cause bail hearings. I just thought, I don't know as a group if we've ever talked about probable cause and bail hearings, especially with the newer members,
Yeah.
a whole lot. So I thought maybe we just do a little overview. The bail forms, if somebody has had a probable cause and bail hearing, it's in a document called lodging documents. And it's usually the first form. So it'll tell you what happened, if they were released or not released.
Reason why? Yeah.
Yep. Also, we've had a couple where probable cause has been challenged lately. And so we've come up with a new process that on the schedules in the note section, we will notate if PC isn't found on a condition. Because we did have one come up recently where we went through the violation and one of the board members is like, well, wait a minute, what about this one? Because it wasn't read off and asked for guilt or not guilt.
Yeah.
And it was because PC wasn't found on it. So it was the easiest way for all of us to keep track of what conditions PC wasn't found on.
I don't know if you're keeping track of the numbers, but it seems with having hearings every Friday that we're doing a lot more of them now.
I can get numbers for July.
Yeah.
For the June meeting. I don't know if we're doing more of them. Are we doing more of them, or are
I
we
was gonna
just
go
doing them
along with what you were
We're
saying.
doing them more consistent.
We're not piecemealing them. I'm not calling each of you going, hey, can you do 2 on this day? And then, hey,
Yeah.
can you do 2 on that day? And hey, can you do 3 on this day?
Yeah.
It's the
Every day.
same day every week.
And it
they're-
worked better for you guys.
Oh, so much better.
Worked better for us too, I
Right.
think. Because we know Fridays.
I can do a comparison.
Yeah.
I
just
have-
Curious, yeah.
I have the, you give me a second.
So Angela, if somebody gets arrested who's on parole or charged with violating their conditions, and the PO is requesting a violation of parole, we have 20 days to schedule a hearing. If we can't do it within 20 days, we schedule it the next month when they're going to be held at that site. Then we have to do a probable cause custody hearing
Okay.
to determine whether they should remain incarcerated if they are, pending the final hearing, or whether there is cause to find that they did violate those conditions.
How many did you have last week?
2.
At 3 on Friday.
So last year, we had a total of 85 probable cause bail hearings. Out of those, 10 of them PC was contested. I was trying to find my numbers for the year before. So I can look to this year. I would say we're probably on par about with the same. I don't think we're a whole lot
I
different.
was just curious because where they're automatically scheduled now.
I think they were asking for bail pretty much on almost every case anyway.
Okay.
It's just, no, they're up. So in 2023, we had 54 total with 9 contested. So we're up about 30 in 2024. I mean, the good thing about them being automatically scheduled is we're not missing people. We're meeting our deadline and meeting our due process requirements where we weren't consistently before because people would fall through the cracks. Chasing the attorneys was getting to be too much.
Yeah.
The one thing that we are instituting in the office is once the final schedule is set, if somebody is lodged between when the final schedule is set and the date of the hearings, we're not adding them to the schedule. We're going to schedule them for a PC hearing because we're getting a lot of challenges on those cases. I don't have time to prepare and so forth. It's just easier. I mean, are we finding that the PC bail hearing is getting too much to?
No, it's not that. I'm just thinking, I think it works more efficiently.
Yeah.
And there is more of them. We're not missing any.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I thought there would be more. Yeah.
I think we're also finding that more folks are getting lodged not within that 20-day period anymore.
Yeah.
Even though we have hearings happening all the time.
Interesting.
Because we don't schedule them automatically if they're within the 20 days. Unless they get postponed.
And
Really?
it just happens to be Murphy's Law and our luck that we'll have the hearing day where
Right.
they get incarcerated that morning.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, we're outside 20 days now. So I can't add them to today.
Or there's a good chunk of them are within 22 days.
Oh,
They're
Literally
just
on the cusp.
on the cusp.
Yeah.
Yep. I will say we're lucky to have that 20-day period because I know corrections only has 4 for furlough violations.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think it works well. It's efficient. It is helpful too if you have a violation hearing that's scheduled to just quickly look at the PC bail hearing.
Yeah, look at the
It's a lot of
look at the
information.
form or potentially even listen to if you have the 10-15 minutes to listen to the audio because a lot of information comes out in those PC bail hearings where a lot of it you're going to hear again or the defense is going to rely that you've already heard it because they're already pitching disposition a lot of the time when they're trying to pitch release during a bail hearing.
Where they want to go. Yeah. Good.
So kind of if you don't mind if I skip to the offender files review
No,
because
go
that
ahead.
kind of goes in hand. I didn't think of that when I wrote out stuff. Like, just is everybody aware? I just want to go over again because there's a lot of questions of what conditions does somebody have or what does it? Is everybody good with where the offender files are and where you can find the information and how we label everything? Okay, just want to make sure because there's a lot of questions that come up often of what conditions do they have? What happened here? What do you mean he was violated?
Condition, I'm just lazy.
Okay, that's fine.
At least you're honest.
I'm honest about it.
That's fine.
I know she has it up. I said, what did he have? Condition 16?
No, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure everybody knows where it is, and if I needed to broadcast it again, because we try to label everything as clear as we can.
Just didn't want to go back into.
No, that's fine.
But other than that, it's
Having them in the folder like that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Plus, if you want to go back, especially in violation hearings, if we've had 2 other violation hearings and you want to go back and watch the audio video, you'll see what happened at the second one and what was promised by them.
Yeah, I would actually recommend that if you are inheriting a violation that disposition was postponed.
Yeah.
That you go back and look at the first one.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Or the first 2 or 3.
Or 3.
Or you get a violation and then during the violation hearing, when somebody happens to say, oh, they were reprimanded and the attorney goes, we're not involved in reprimand hearings, but it was actually a violation hearing where they received a reprimand. The attorney was involved in it. They just don't remember.
Conveniently.
And with the attorneys now, we've got Jill out for a period of time. And so It's Emily and Dawn
And Marco.
and Mark.
Marco?
Okay.
That's not so bad.
No, it's not.
Recorded.
Anything else on that, MJ?
No, I just wanted to I thought it was good to just chat about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And these happen every Friday at 9 a.m. It does have a different link, but if anybody ever wants to sit in and listen to one,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome.
Hearing interviews.
Oh, I must have an old one up. I just wanted to talk a little bit about it's something that came up at the APAI conference, and it was something that came up last week, actually, that really rose it to the top of my mind. That I just want to remind folks that especially for in-person record reviews, statute requires that they can ask for an interview. The board should be interviewing the individual, allowing the individual to speak. Last week we had a case where DOC spoke, and then the board had we went around, the board had no questions. You took a motion, the individual never got to speak before the vote was taken.
Right.
And then the individual went off
Yep.
a little bit. So I just want to remind folks to stick to your SDMF, even though DOC may be presenting you and I did talk to Lori about this, they have a right to speak to you all.
Mhm.
So allow them to speak, even though you may think that the case is cut and dry by everything that was presented to you. We should be for an in-person record review. Because some of them write us a nice, long, inclusive letter. Some of them don't. We should be at least asking them, why do you want to be seen? Because they know that DOC is not recommending them.
Yeah.
So I just want to remind.
That was my fault.
The interview, and that was the one thing that it was brought up, and I think it might have been Richard Stroker that brought it up about how the interview is always try to find, even though you may see all negative in a case, always try to find a positive while you're doing the interview too, because a positive is going to go a long way, and it's also going to let them take something out of their meeting with you to build on.
Mhm.
So just a reminder.
Yep, good point. Yeah, I was there on that one, and yep, absolutely.
I listened to it all.
Yep.
And in that one too, even though the individual has a right to speak, if they say something like 4 or 5 times over and over again, even 2, 3 times over and over again, you can cut them off, and they don't need to. You can stop what they're speaking, because in this case, he kept going and he kept trying to combat at DOC. So I'm just using this as an example because it's fresh. But even though they have a right to speak, if they are combative, if they're saying the same thing over and over again, you can cut them off and remain order in your hearings.
Or if they start nodding off while you're interviewing them.
Yeah.
So
That too.
I still want to watch that. You didn't.
We had a gentleman come in
He was just
2 weeks ago.
I was like asking him
Fell asleep
questions and he's like doing this.
Okay.
He was fine.
I didn't know if you did. I couldn't find it.
It was hot. He had to walk there.
He had no drug issues, so.
Yeah.
We know nothing
Watch it.
about, we need to educate ourselves.
Yeah. He was
Do
just-
you want to watch it for pure entertainment, or do you want to watch it to try to learn something? Because if it's for pure entertainment, then I'm not.
It brought up some questions for me of like, what are we allowed to, are we allowed to ask that he have a
Have
UA,
drug test.
have he, can
Yes.
what's it, like, do
No,
we
did you ask
recommend,
that?
do we
No,
mandate,
no,
do
no.
we-
Back in the day when we did these in person, we
cannot.
see somebody come in, we get them a drug test before we
Cannot
go
do
any
that.
farther,
We
they'd come
cannot
back in
order a
and say,
drug test.
well, this hearing's
Ask
over.
the PO
No.
if they drug
Oh.
tested.
We can ask if they have, but we cannot ask
We
them.
can't
to.
ask them to do it?
No.
Can we recommend?
No.
So no recommend, no ask,
We had a
no.
case.
Where I decide.
Back in the day, things were better.
No. We had a
They
case,
have to
so
have,
we said we wouldn't hold the hearing because he was under the influence.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
We didn't say under the, we just said
you
while
postponed
he-
disposition.
Vote was
Yeah.
postponed because, was
Yeah.
not capable of answering the
Yeah.
question.
And then he went off the deep end.
Oh, did he?
Wasn't happy with us.
So has he had the hearing again?
No.
He hasn't.
He'll be coming up this month.
I hope he gets us 3 again.
But you can't, no, you can't ask for a drug test. You can't say we aren't going to hold a hearing because we.
Right, and that's what we did.
I think the
That's what we
supervisor
did,
was
but-
heading in to meet with the PO and him and,
I think there were a lot more POs on in that office that
Yeah.
were observing
Yes.
for a reason. Cause there were
Really?
4 of them
Yeah.
that were watching.
And then one left an individual with us alone in the conference room to go help out when
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was yelling in the hallway.
Wow.
But I know I talked to a PO after that hearing about some other stuff and drug testing came up. But there's many steps that happen before they can even drug test. So it's
Yeah.
not,
Really?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like
It's changed a
consents
lot.
have to get given, supervisors have to sign
Yes,
off, you have to go, yeah.
I thought it
Yeah.
was the,
Change.
No.
No.
if they suspect, they can do it right.
No.
No.
They have to meet a reasonable suspicion.
I would say that's a reasonable suspicion.
And there is a whole, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's a lot.
There's like 5 or 6
They have a whole-
steps that
they
they
have a-
have to do before they can
Yeah.
even give the test.
Wow.
they have a policy online.
but this individual too supposedly was on methadone. So
Right.
presumably he gets tested there.
Right.
Right.
Well, it depends on how,
Unsupervised.
so the same program that he attends, I work for and, not in that clinic, but.
Yeah.
The policy is like, if he's getting dosed, and this is what, in my mind, I knew it wasn't because he just got dosed, because when you get dosed, you have to sit there for a certain amount of time to make sure it's not having any of those effects. So I knew that wasn't the case, but if his name didn't come up in a random,
Mhm.
he may not get
Not tested.
tested for
Right.
2 or 3 weeks.
And they don't do randoms and our field offices don't do randoms anymore.
this
They
is just
only,
sort of
no, I,
Yeah, the treatment
I'm
center,
just
if they
saying-
don't.
as a general policy, they only do randoms in the facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not really random.
Mine. Thank you.
So in that particular clinic, there's random and then there's if he's under suspicion.
Yes.
But I don't know. I'm hoping that if that PO can get him tested, my hope is that they at least contacted to the clinic. and
I
said,
do have some more information
This is what
about
we
him.
saw.
I just haven't had a chance to process it all.
On that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she keep testing. They stop testing.
Oh, okay.
They're being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was kind of looking for.
If you test, they will be.
So getting back to the record reviews, if, for me anyway, when I review the record reviews, if there's any question about whether we should save them or not, I just make a
Yeah,
note on
now you're
it.
gonna take my second.
No.
Any of you are looking at those and you got questions about it, don't hesitate to let us know.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, some of the record reviews, you can look at them. There's no.
right. The
Yeah.
ones I'm always curious about are it's the same report we got the year before with no change, and there's obviously got to be some changes.
Well, I asked on one of them, and I said, well, like, there was no change, and there was no hope of any change. And I asked them, was there any program to look at? Oh, well, we're thinking about looking at programming. I said,
Yeah.
So that was a 15 to life.
Yeah,
Mm.
they were both.
So looking at, there was no program for them, and I don't think there was any intent of having a program in the near future for them.
Has there
I
been any?
think that was the frustration
Right.
with the first one, and I think that's why he went off and just kept
So what do you
asking
do
the
with
same
them?
I don't know.
question.
They still correction. Well, there's theoretically should be a plan in place. Not that we're going to review them in 2 years.
MJ, has there been any talk
It's fine.
in the
For 5
DOC
years, yeah.
level about programming specifically and what's the, because it feels like there's just not, like, it's even going away less and less, the
Yeah,
amount of
fewer.
programming that's on. Has there been any talk about beefing that up or
I
increasing
have
that?
not heard any. That's why I'm gonna try to get the programming folks here in June.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
To know what the options are. what
Frustrating.
the-
and it seems like we hear more, at least in the last year that I've been here.
Mhm.
Well, we did used to have that, but now we don't.
At least to have an idea of how they're making their determinations and what there is.
And if
And-
there's any sort of
It's-
plan to
And
increase or.
I know that I don't know about the incarcerated. I don't know what they're doing incarcerated, but I know there's no specific programming in the field anymore.
Mhm.
That is all based on the designated agencies to.
Which are already strapped.
Yeah.
Which are incredibly
They have a lot
strapped
of difficulty with
and don't
providers.
have,
Yeah, and they didn't
and
have.
don't have the money
They don't
to
have provide-
put,
they have
to
no
provide
provi-
it.
They have no providers.
Yeah.
And as the dinosaur are in the room, but there used to be all kinds of programs. Gee, like alcohol program. What a concept. And they got rid of that. You know what I mean? What a concept out
Yeah.
there. But in the regionals especially, they don't have any program.
No,
Nothing.
I mean, I'm just thinking about in the designated agency that I worked for.
Yeah.
There was nothing, we were barely keeping afloat
No.
with because of lack of
They
providers.
can't
and
find providers.
We couldn't do
and
things like
it's-
anger management,
Nope.
and offender conditions.
TUC is having the same
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't.
It's frustrating.
What's interesting too is a lot of the case staffing reports indicate programming is required, whatever, and then you get to the interview and it's not.
And
Yeah.
I think that was part of this struggle, was that programming was required, but then they case staffed in that programming wasn't available.
No program was available that would address his need
Right.
areas.
Yeah.
So then it was like every 5 years, they were gonna re-case staff
And
them
there'll
to
be no
figure it out.
programming.
Which that's kind of, that's kind of the.
But what do you do with people like that? What, as board member, what do we do with them during a hearing?
Well, you have to decide in your interview whether this is something you want to continue with, or, depending on the risk for this person to be in the community. If it's a lifer, there's a lot more going on there than.
The chances most likely it's going to be a sex offender.
Oh, yeah.
They both.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'd done 32 years.
Yeah,
As a sex offender.
yeah.
Yeah, 15 to life, then 32 years. So in jail years, that's almost like 45.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's a long time.
It is.
And can I ask the correction, the caseworker, you tell they haven't been looking.
Yeah.
They're just warehousing him. So that was his frustration. I could certainly understand it.
Well, we've certainly done a number of cases like that and put them on parole, and they've been successful. So each case is individual, and you've got to weigh the options. Hopefully, SDMF will help.
Yes.
But another thing you have to, on this guy, I mean, he's been incarcerated for so long.
Yeah.
How do you know what his risk is gonna be? I mean, he's been a model,
Inmate,
inmate.
got a job, never a problem.
He hasn't been out, so you don't know what kind of a risk
Yeah.
he's gonna be.
And you got to factor in their age now.
He's older, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Level C offender and
Yep.
no program till he gets released. That was his.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that bothered me. That one did bother me.
Yeah.
So. But if we put him on the parole list, I can't even imagine the outcry. But I don't know. I need somebody smarter than I
not
am.
easy.
No, Solomon needs to be here or something, but
Before we move on, can I ask if anybody else is going to get food or anything? Because if so, can we take a break? Because I found that really distracting.
Sorry.
Because I couldn't hear. All I could hear was the two of you talking, and I couldn't hear anybody else. Really. So I just, if we need to, I was going to call for a 5-minute break, but the conversation just came. So I don't mind you guys getting food. I just would ask that we take a break.
Okay, let's take a break.
We are back from our break.
no. Thank God.
Table.
How's it going, Sam?
I would have been upset.
Oh, you're gonna set the tone.
God,
Next.
pass, come back to me. I think it's good. I do have questions. I always have questions, sorry.
Me too.
Right.
How,
You're not the
so
only one, Sam. I do too all the time.
Questions are good.
I know how the board members are appointed by the governor. How are the chair and vice chair determined? Like, is that by the governor too, or how does
The
that?
chair is by the governor.
Yep,
The vice chair is by us.
okay. All right. I think those are my only.
Can I ask a question? Not pointing you out, Pat, but how long have you been vice chair? Because I've never been, I'm just curious, because
We
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's been 20 years.
I've been on board 25 years.
Right.
Oh my gosh, really?
Unbelievable. I think this is my.
I didn't
25th
realize
year.
you'd been on that long. Wow,
Yeah, she was
1990.
appointed by Howard Dean.
Yes.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Dean, how long have you been on?
This is my 20th year. Yeah.
So I know we do annual policies we're supposed to review every year, but we never, unless there's an issue, we never look
Right.
at the vice chair or anything, or if anybody wants to stand up.
We
I'm
pretty-
just curious.
Yeah. We pretty much left it that with Pat, if she wanted to not be the vice chair anymore, then we would open it up for anyone else who may want to. But that's between us. I mean, as a group, we can decide how we want to determine that. It's entirely up to us. But for the most part, what we've done is try to schedule hearings so that one of us is chairing either hearing.
Once in a while, we're both there sometimes.
Yeah,
That's great.
depending on the schedule, it's easier. Once in a while, I try to have once a month where the two of us are together. It doesn't always work out, but I try to, so we can see what each other's doing in that regard. MJ has suggested that when we do that, that I have Pat chair, but
I like that idea.
she always defers back. That's it? Those are the only two questions?
Well, for now. I know when you get around, I'll have another one.
Okay.
We'll come back around to you.
She's not shy about asking.
I know.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Angela, Sam and Katie were new last year. So they've been on about-
Like exact same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Started exact same
Yeah.
month, exact same meeting,
Yeah.
everything.
Tom?
No, the staff have been great. I really appreciate their help. I mean, of my weird questions that I ask, they've always been right on the top of things and.
Yeah.
Things are been very, very busy for somebody who's retired.
Yeah. Tom is from DOC. He was a
Most everything.
superintendent at Rutland for many years.
Many did everything. Casework supervisor. Used to take care of you guys. make sure
Yes,
that
you
you're-
did.
I
You
was-
did a nice job.
Yeah, but
We always enjoyed going to Marble Valley.
my biggest fear always was when we had a bad seed that was in there, and I said, you probably don't ever know. It's always had like 4 officers.
Yeah.
I said, make sure you stay in there and be
Yeah.
there. So I was always very particular
Yeah.
with the parole board.
Have a nice big audience.
But when I retired, when the things was, I said, I don't quite understand some of these things. So I said, it's fine. One of my bucket list things. So I'm done.
No, you touched on something that it would be interesting to see how others feel. I don't know if anybody else is going to touch on it, is the workload. Because I don't know, like you said, I would assume that the hearings are, we could go all day and actually
Mhm.
have some breathing room. But I can't imagine the prep that goes into a lot of this too.
Yeah.
It takes, you have a lot of cases, the prep takes a lot of time.
Mhm.
So I know it's what the other parole boards make a lot more money just than I put them.
No kidding.
But yeah, but it does, I mean, the prep takes the time, and sometimes when you see the parole violation, oh, good, this was not quite as bad as some of the other ones.
Or when we hear, but there's 5 witnesses
Yeah.
today
Oh.
for this one
Oh,
hearing.
you see
That one next week,
tough.
we blocked off 2 hours.
For that, just that one.
That's a lot. But no, it's a time commitment.
It is important.
That's part of the nature of the beast, though.
And that's why I think it's important to have the overflow day, because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't pile in more cases in a single day because you get overwhelmed trying
Yeah.
to deal with
You
each one of
get,
them.
you get kind of punchy toward the end.
Yeah.
Too. It's,
Yeah,
You want to be fair to everybody.
for sure.
Lori and I may be exploring different ways. We're hoping to come back in June with some ideas around some of that. We just haven't had time to chat.
With scheduling.
With scheduling, with possibly talking with the attorneys with some different options, and we percolated a little bit on Friday, but it didn't come out. We didn't have enough time, so we're going to try to block some time off in June to sit and really look at how we can get better communication going with the attorneys again and so forth.
Again, I don't need case law from 1956 and things of that nature. I mean,
Anything
so
else?
it's kind of ridiculous.
And I'm gonna start trying to keep you guys in my ear as I'm facilitating, because facilitating takes a lot of my time and my policy and prep time away. And both Carla and Colby are taxed out too. But really going back to the work with Richard to get that violation matrix together. So maybe I think having that out could also help point them in the right direction. If we can kind of decide on a philosophy and a way we're going to go with our violations,
Right.
that will allow them to prep in a certain way and send them down a track. Because right now they're throwing anything at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Well, it's a liberty issue, I understand, but some of the things that they're throwing out as a liberty issue makes no sense to
Right.
me.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't, like I said, no kidding aside, I don't care about case law
Yeah.
on this one case.
Well-
That's not really something, I don't know the case law. She can mention it.
Well, and we're also looking at doing, Lori's looking at, she's hoping we could get conflict counsel, but she's also looking at maybe bringing in another attorney from another AAG's office who's a great trainer to possibly do some violation training around the case law and all of that for everybody. And then just have the DOC attorneys and the PRO attorneys sit in the back of the room. Because it doesn't say we have to involve them. It says they have to be present to hear what is given to you all.
Oh,
But the issues are when they throw things out like that.
Yeah.
I don't have my statute books behind me to flip through. She goes, I'm assuming the parole board is aware of da. And I want to say, like, hell we are. But
Well, you can also jot it down.
yeah,
And when you go into deliberative, we can bring it up and I can bring up the website and
whatever
look at it
cited.
yeah, true.
if we need to.
But you
Yeah.
also have to kind of cut through, some of this stuff is not applicable to what
Exactly.
we're doing.
Right.
It's just a reach on their part to
Right.
cloud the issue.
All
And I
right.
think we do a pretty good job of cutting through that.
Oh, yeah. It's just like the recent one, you know which one I'm talking about, which went on for 2+ hours, then they waved and when you
We
got,
got color photos.
when we got the color photos.
Yeah,
They argued
That's,
about-
I knew once I looked at those, this is why you waved.
I mean,
Wasn't any doubt it was him.
I know color photos.
but it does get, I mean, I've dealt with attorneys all my life and sometimes it cuts the chase. You know, I used to tell them, I'm married, I know what no means. I understand. But it's, yeah, that one would hit, that particular case went to the top.
Student. Katie?
I think for me, things are going like, I always have questions too, like Sam, and sometimes they don't come up at the most, like, I'll, just kind of throw it out there at the most weird times or whatever. But I think one of the things for me is what I've noticed is how different all of our interview styles are and like the types of focused questions that we ask. So, and that made me think about mine. So I'm trying to get a little bit better on that as we kind of go through it. Cause I think sometimes mine can go a little bit long-winded and go a little off track. So
Well, you're
I'm trying to tailor that a little better.
You do focus on what
But-
your expertise is in.
Right.
And
You do it from your experience.
Yeah.
So you come
But
in-
you bring out some good points when you ask about, programming or, their mental health or what drugs
Yeah.
they're on or.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going between, like, some of my first initial thoughts were it would be great if we were had more of a structured, standardized way of asking. But then I thought, well, at the same time, certain areas wouldn't get
Right.
brought out too. So,
well, one of the nice things about the SDMF is it does force you to be somewhat structured
Mhm.
because there are domains you need to get information on.
Yeah.
And for me, if I know that they're on the MAT program and they're doing counseling, that's all I need to know because I'm not an
Mhm.
expert in what's appropriate and what isn't for them. But I don't need to dig into it the way you do. And I understand your perspective is a little different because that's what you do. At the same time, we all have backgrounds in different things, and sometimes those will come up as ways to interview them in a different way or to get to the bottom of the issue that we're trying to.
So talking about interviewing, why have you stopped asking questions when you're chairing? I've noticed when you're chairing a regular parole hearing now, you don't ask questions anymore. After DOC is done, you move into a next board member. But when Dean's sharing, you ask a plethora of questions. So I'm just asking.
On me.
No, because when you chair, and Pat used to ask a ton of questions,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden one day it was like a switch flipped, and
I
you're
guess,
not asking anymore.
I guess, I figure if I ask a lot of questions, I'm asking questions that maybe the board members wanted to ask.
Or she probably figures if I'm on, I'm gonna ask too many, so.
So, no, I figure
Oh,
give them the chance to ask the questions, and if they don't ask whatever I need to know, then I'll ask.
because I was just curious, because Dean still goes through every question.
Yeah,
I
he
know.
has.
Sometimes if I'm on a board with Dean, he asks the questions I was gonna ask, so I don't ask anything, or I don't have
Okay.
anything else to ask. But
No, I was just curious,
Yeah.
because I was just like,
I think I want to give, I guess I just want to give the other two board
Yeah.
members a chance to ask the
oh wait, no, I
questions.
was just curious, because all of a sudden I was like,
It was a notable shift.
yeah, it was notable,
Really?
Yeah.
because you would go into a conversation and then all of a sudden, boom, it's like, Sam, do you have any questions? Tom, do you have any questions? And there was no questions, so I was just curious.
I guess if I ask a lot of questions, then I ask them, they said, no, I don't have any questions. So I figured I asked what they were gonna ask.
Oh,
So now they're not gonna ask, so now.
well, it kind of goes with Katie. You all have different questions to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
It all depends.
So I was just curious. Sorry,
I think
kinda hijacked
That's
your
always
statement.
been very, even from like the beginning, it's always been interesting to me how.
Yeah.
How different we all ask in which, like, some areas more than others, and
And we used to have board members
how
that
we-
would ask the same question. Even
They
if
weren't
somebody,
listening.
even if somebody else had already asked it. Somebody else had asked the question.
Oh, it doesn't happen the way it
Then
used to.
they asked the question.
like I feel like I tend to focus more on like there's the technical stuff, but typically
Mental
that's already
things.
come out
Mhm.
from corrections themselves. They're gonna live here, they're gonna do this, they're gonna be connected here. I tend to more look at the sheet that they've written
Yeah.
and judge that from what they say and like, but wait a minute, this isn't jiving.
Jiving.
What you wrote and what you're saying isn't really,
Yeah.
so I like to
I
tease
like
that out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did get a lot from Richard on that talk that he did on interviewing, and it made me feel a little bit better about the direction that I asked and more in depth that I asked, because he was certainly sort of advocating for that.
Does
too.
everyone fill out the STMF when they're reviewing the case?
Yes, I don't do it before, I do it after.
I do it both.
I do it.
I do it at the beginning. I always look, and then I change it as we go through the interview.
Yes.
But I always like it ahead of time.
Yeah.
As it gives me a way to look at it.
Yeah.
So I have it printed out for when I do my prep,
That's what I do
and I
too.
match it up,
Yeah.
and then I fill it out after.
I print it out first and I fill in the criminal history.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Like if there's been any DRs or anything, like I'll put
Mhm.
that in, and then at the bottom I'll write some
Yeah.
questions that I want to make sure I ask.
I just
And
leave
then
it,
go
if I don't
into-
have the answer, I leave it blank, and then I
Yeah.
just,
That's what I do.
and I
Yeah.
have a little piece, and I have a paper for each case, and I fill it in. And
It serves as a reminder what things weren't incled in the report that you
Yeah,
need to get.
exactly.
So I have 100 printed off, blank
Mhm.
ones.
Oh, really?
If folks want to take them, if we need more, I can hit print some more and so that way
So
you
you
don't.
I'll
do-
definitely
printing
take some because
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time
You can
I
print however many you want.
I just need
Before
more
you leave.
paper. That's all. I print them on my printer.
I've been just printing on my printer at home, but
You talk about Ted with the same question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you go,
I don't remember him.
He used to just
Peter
chat
would-
sometimes.
Yeah.
Woo.
Peter would sometimes not hear what you were saying.
Or he'd want to go back with emphasis.
I know you already asked, but.
Ted's was always, you have a drinking problem.
Yeah.
So that was his whole, but.
Yeah.
Every case, better way to say.
this isn't Sunday school.
Yeah. Wayne?
We were wondering if we can go back to the full 15 hours prep time. As opposed to the 100.
Who's we?
Pat and I, Tom, we've all discussed it, that it'd be far more efficient and hey, now that we're doing SDMF, that's taking hours as opposed and days. I mean, when you break 11 cases down to do an SDMF, that's a day and a half for me. It's just,
No, I'm just trying to, I just got my calculator out because I'm trying to, because 8 hours at 1250 is 100.
Yeah, that's
So-
what it's based on.
So I'm guessing.
You're spending more than 8 hours to review cases?
I did the 2 cases. It's not reviewing. I can review a case and do my old fashioned notes.
Yeah.
Boom.
It's the
But it's
SDMF.
transferring this, go and find this, get that,
I
get that.
still,
It's just,
I still debate, Wayne, because your old fashioned notes to me just seem like they hit SDMF. So I'm still trying to figure out.
and that's,
I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is between your old fashioned notes and is it just the different order? I'm trying to figure out what the
I didn't have to go.
snag
I didn't
is.
have to go from form to form and justify my answer. I wrote all my notes down and I had questions. If I had some real high point questions, those are my notes. Done. I didn't have to sit here and go.
Do others spend that much time? I never spend more than 2 or 3 hours at the most going through things.
For the 2 days I had last week, I spent probably a 10-hour day with a break here and there.
Overflow, I think there's 11.
I'm looking at that. I'm just dreading tomorrow because that's all I will do tomorrow.
But I guess I'm not sure what you're doing with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I don't know how I can do it any more efficiently, but
That's why I'm trying to understand. I guess I'd have to see how I'd be curious to see how you're doing it because I'm curious what your old fashioned.
Dissect it more with the
I read the
SDMF form.
case. I have my notebook out here. I got the SDMF form here. I got the case there. I go through the case.
So why do you have your notebook?
I go through my note because that's me. That's never going to change. I write this all up the way I used to, and then I can usually pick off out of my notes some of the stuff, and then I got to go back and forth and back.
So you should. So honestly, so here's my theory: it's how to train. The way we should be looking at these cases should be through the SDMF lens.
Right.
So when you're opening a case, those domains should be hot on your mind, and that's what you should be looking at.
They're right in front of me.
And the report
Right, you're saying they're
flows.
right in front of you, but you should be able to do the comparison there. I just don't understand why you're going after you're writing your notes, why you're going back to the SDMF to then find the
Well,
SDMF.
can I hand my notes into you instead of the SDMF then? Because you don't understand.
Yeah, but can you?
This is the way I do it. This is me.
Yeah, but can you modify how you do it to just use the SDMF?
Yeah,
No,
You're wasting
that's
your
what we've
time.
asked for. In the direction
the
we've gone
interviews would
in.
be really quick. Any questions? I read all the stuff they've put in.
Yeah.
I try to pick up a couple of good points out of that
Yeah.
because we always want to throw a carrot out. Other than that, if I want to go just off the SDMF form, it's going to be, I have no questions and hey, good job in getting your high school diploma. Next.
Okay. I don't see that.
Well, I know.
Pat?
I do my SCMF forms as I'm reading. I do
Yeah.
the same thing you do. I have the form on one
Mhm.
monitor and the parole summary on the other. And I just, as I'm reading it, I think, oh, that domain I need. So I put it
Mhm.
down. I still make notes too, because I don't always have all the forms up at the same time. So if I've got a question about offender change,
Yeah.
and that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
That's to figure out. But
So if you've got a printed form, SDMF form, you can make a note right there. Need to ask about
Okay.
offender change.
But she
my-
does it on a monitor.
yes, I do it on the monitor.
But you said you're also doing notes.
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
See, I don't get why you're doing it
Well, I
3
I
different.
don't know, because it's always the way I've done
I
it.
guess that the question I'm going to go back to Wayne for a minute. I guess the question I have, Wayne, is what kind of stuff are you digging into that's not part of one of those domains? Because that's where I'm really curious, because those domains hit just about everything that you guys are asking
Well,
during
they
a
should.
hearing. So I'm just trying to figure out what
I don't know.
is not fitting.
I guess I can't answer that question. Change comes hard, and this is just.
Don't make.
I've said my piece on this before, but this is just regurgitation of it. It's clerical work, which is ridiculous. I even had a discussion with Richard about this, and he concurred with me unbelievably. And I know you have sat on numerous oral boards in your career, and I kind of look at a parole hearing as a oral board. I'm like, whether you use standardized questions, which you were alluding to, a lot of times oral boards, everybody gets the same questions. Everybody has to be asked the same question. Or in the old days, oral boards where you asked your questions the way you want them. So I asked Richard, I said, you go through this form, and it's all consistently filled out by the PO with these domains. Their report has all these domains. Why isn't the PO transferring his report into these domains? And best case scenario, the parole board gets a copy of that SDMF form so they can look at it and say, well, he's moderate here, explore that. He's really high here, I want to know that. But why we're taking information that is now set up to be compatible with the SDMF form and transferring work that's already been done is beyond my comprehension.
I don't look at it as work that's already been done. The report is a comprehensive review of this file, of this individual, and included in it are aspects that transfer to the domains
That address those domains.
So, but there are a number of them that aren't. There are a number of them that aren't completed. So those are the ones I want to follow up with in the interview to make sure they've been addressed before I make my decision. But I'm not spending 8-10 hours reviewing them.
There's a lot in those reports that come in that aren't filled in.
Yeah.
That, like from
That's
from
where we get the
DOC
interview
that aren't,
to finish it up.
there's some of them don't even have any comments about, not even to say they're not eligible for program, like there's just nothing.
Yeah, and
Or,
Right. So
That
that's a
frames
question
your
mark.
question.
if they're on interrupt, they're not eligible. Why are we even why are we wasting time with it?
Because we want
Because
to
it's
find
a
out
law.
if they are going to be doing programming, Wayne. If they haven't written it on the report, that doesn't mean it's not something they're going to have to do.
I don't think that's what he was saying.
That's what I didn't ask. I said,
That's not what he was
if they're on
saying.
an interrupt or they're not eligible for parole, period, for whatever reasons listed, why? Why are we doing this?
Because by law, we had to see them.
Well, I understand. That's
At
what I
their
just said.
minimum.
By law, they got to be seen.
Because someone's on an interrupt, as
or
you
they've
know,
asked to be.
because they're on an interrupt does not mean that we're not going to be reviewing them for parole supervision and making a decision to do that. Now, typically, unless it's a short-term interrupt that's left and they're getting ready for
Right.
release, we're not going to be releasing them
Right.
because the interrupt is based on some factors that took place. But statutorily, we still have to review that case and we have to make a decision on it. That's why we're seeing it.
But I don't spend a lot of time on that one.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I find the SDMF as really helpful in just putting things in order and making sure that we evaluate all the criteria that we need to evaluate on this individual.
Well, it focuses you.
Yeah, and
It's
for me, it's a lot
evidence-based.
more efficient and quicker than the old way of just taking notes and trying to guess at where you were going to go. That's why I don't understand why.
Yeah, and I respectfully disagree with MJ about questioning. I see the questions now are you just can't. People are going down the forum and asking that question instead of exploring other areas or doing whatever. So the questions are just coming off that form now, not out of thought.
Not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. And
No,
I,
If anything, I
I thought
don't
they were
usually
more-
touch on
I
too
thought they
many
were
of
more
Tell
those.
me what's changed in your life. What have you done to change? Gee,
that's something
what
that,
domain are you filling out
but
there?
that's
Tell
something
me
that
about your
wasn't
criminal
asked.
history.
But Wayne, that wasn't something that was asked very, I mean, I could almost guarantee everyone, you wanted the ballpark score, the baseball scores, and you were going deep into the criminal history every hearing. And others would go down. Now I feel like, I don't know, to me, listening, it's more meaningful and it involves the individual more.
Mhm.
I felt like before we weren't actually looking for that positive that Richard had mentioned, that I've heard him mention. Nobody was looking for that. And there's nothing saying you can't ask questions that are outside of the SDMF. So I'm a little confused why you think we're just bootstrapped to the SDMF. I'm kind of curious, what kind of questions are you looking to ask that are outside of the SDMF?
Oh, I'll ask any question I want to ask, but
So what's the problem then?
there's no problem. I love it.
No,
It's
we all know you don't like it.
To me, it's just, to me, and the way I address this job and this position, it's just redundancy that I really didn't need and don't need, but that's what it is. So I don't write them, I just sing them.
Well, I'm sorry you're spending that much time, but I don't see us going back to an hourly rate. That's not going to happen.
No, and I don't
There's
see
a
us
lot of money
going,
invested in this program.
we're gonna keep, and I think having an evidence-based program
Yeah.
to frame decisions around is very important, because prior to this,
It's critical.
we didn't have anything that your decisions were framed around.
And in that conference, we've seen some of those states that don't, and
Right.
sort of how they're sort of
Yeah.
struggling with that. But I think I very rarely ask questions based on the SDM, because that's all usually right there. You know, what their history is. I tend to use that, but where I really use the SDMF, what I tend to look for that a lot is when I'm looking back through who we've granted and who we've denied, I tend to look at which scores they have and like, well, wait a minute, why did we grant this? And with,
Mhm.
I'd like to do
these
some
aggravated, why did we grant this, but yet someone with very similar,
I would
we
love
did
to,
not,
I
like,
would love to have some time to look more at that data.
Yeah.
Well,
so to me, it was more of like, this way, when I fill out the SDMF, in each category, I try to at least write something that backs up
Exactly.
why I put
Mhm.
that, because that way, if it's ever
That's what we're
questioned,
supposed to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, and it also helps guide me and say, well, wait a minute, this very last guy we just saw 5 minutes ago, he had worse scores, but we didn't.
Right.
And
So-
there's reasons in there that
Yeah,
justify
so,
that. Because it's not a score.
Not a
It's
score.
oh, right, but I mean,
all
like,
just a coding.
yeah, so when I look at the coding and I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna justify this without having to write a huge paragraph,
Yeah.
what is a couple of sentences that I could put in that's really gonna hammer home why I'm justifying what I did?
And I
And that's how I tend to fill it out.
can say that a few POs have approached me about the board and the lack of consistency that they see in the fields. And they're like, well, why'd you grant this? I'm like, I asked for the SDMF because I'm not in all the hearings, but I think asking for the form, they can kind of see where we're
Yeah.
coming from and what we're writing in there. And it kind
Yeah.
of brings together the consistency, because prior to this, they're saying, again, like MJ said earlier, they were just seeing what 3 board members were on, and they're like, oh, they're going to revoke everybody today, or they're just going to continue on, or they're going to.
So remember, revocation is not part of SDMF.
Or even
No.
deny
Right,
or
yeah.
grant.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what I was
Yeah.
meaning, was deny or grant. But so that's what corrections has come to me and said more than one.
So it's not
And
just
I've
the,
more-
it's not just the
What do
lawyers,
you mean by
the
correction?
DOC.
like probation officers have made
They're coming
comments.
to you?
Can we talk about it later?
Okay.
Funny person.
We've put an end to,
She's a hairdresser.
yes.
I don't want corrections going to individual poll board
No,
members.
we've put in,
Yeah. That's
We
not-
quickly
This-
extinguished.
it
We
Quickly was shut down,
Okay.
but it was
extinguished
happening.
it quick.
Is that how everybody else is filling out their form too? Are they putting in like
Your justification.
Oh,
qualifiers?
absolutely.
Yeah, yes.
I put my
I thought that's what we were supposed to be
Mhm.
doing,
Okay.
Right.
justifying why you're putting the category you
Yeah.
are.
And I'm not,
Aggravated
yeah.
or-
The
I think
information
at first I was kind of like writing a huge paragraph, but
Oh.
now I've limited it to say, okay, what was
Yeah.
the main 2 sentence?
Sometimes I struggle with just 2 sentences.
Well, because I know, yeah, and sometimes
Well,
it
it's your
helps. 'Cause-
SDMF form. You can put what you want.
What you want on it.
But we hear so many cases every month that if there's ever discrepancies, it helps trigger my memory of,
Right.
Right.
you know.
Cool.
Also give you a chance if you see somebody again, you can look at the previous SCMFs to see if actually something
Right.
has changed,
Yeah.
Right.
which I think is great too.
Yeah.
That's
As
where
we-
you go in the offender file.
As we've taken roundtable into SCMF, but it's all good.
Yes,
We'll go back. Did we finish, Pat?
yes.
Dean? You skipped over yourself.
They asked
Sorry.
everybody to say it.
I know. Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Well, as you know, I'm a strong advocate for the SDMF. I think it's vitally important to the success of the board. And as we bring in new members, it allows us to be more consistent in our decision making. And that's critical. And to be able to justify it, which we do. And we have in the past, but we've had some struggles years ago when we've been challenged and we've been able to be successful, but it takes a lot of extra effort that wasn't there when we didn't have SDMF. And now that it is, we've got a track record to fall back on, which makes our decision making, I think, much better.
Mhm.
I'm really happy that we have it and that it's a strong part of our, and in our conference that we just got back from, it was clear that the states using SDMF were much more organized than the others that were struggling with their decision making.
Or had some other type of decision-making
Yeah.
tool.
So I think there's 10 states now?
There's all, I
That's
think
using
we were 11
SDMF.
and New York is gonna be 12.
New York. is-
Oh, they're bringing it on too.
And then New Hampshire's after New York.
Yeah, we met the New Hampshire folks from there as well.
Good.
So, yeah. Good. So, what's next?
SDMF.
Kind of hit the how's it going.
Yep.
You hit that one, yeah.
We hit that one.
We did, yeah.
So discrepancies.
Uh-oh.
How many
There are.
Are you owing Tom? Because
Sam, did you forget to do them again this time?
No,
I will say,
I did them.
I will say we will, I need to talk to Carla and Colby. We will start following up if you are not completing your SCMF forms because I am now getting asked for the data because NIC is doing a relook at everything
Okay.
and looking at the data. So it's important that you do your forms.
They're not getting done or?
Sometimes,
I had a missing day when I went to go to do them. They were gone.
was that the day that you forgot about the hearings completely?
Is that a
Yeah,
Wednesday?
that was the day.
Was that a Wednesday?
They didn't
It
get
was.
moved until Monday or Tuesday of the following week.
Oh, I
touch 'em until the
think I went
following
on a Saturday or something. I don't know. They were gone. I said, I thought they stayed here for 3 or 4 days. I don't,
Think so.
they were gone.
I've been pretty
I'm gonna
religious.
step out and take this.
Is anybody else?
No,
I will say
Okay.
that was the only blank form
I usually do
I've
a
gotten
couple
from
days
you in a
before
while.
sometime.
and it
Well,
was
that's not
that
bad
day.
then.
And I put notes on our tracker that you didn't know about the hearings that day, so. I don't think I've gotten a blank form in a while. I think Sam was my last one 2 months ago, and I was like, hey, you wanna do
I'm
this?
gonna test you now and leave one blank and see what happens.
Oh, there's been blank answers, but not blank forms.
Well, sometimes when you click on the X, it doesn't appear.
Oh, you like to do 2 or 3 of them?
Or you do 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what I
that's more
do.
my,
Yeah.
too, like.
I don't know if I want this one or that one, I'll do both.
That's an option?
You do it a lot, Mr. Isn't an option.
You know what? I think I'll tell you, I try not to. What happens is I go back in
And
after the hearing
Yeah,
And you
click
forget
on
to
it,
take
and take
one
it.
off.
I thought I picked it up, but
yeah.
this is- I'll take us a hit on that one. All right.
PD,
Ah,
full test here might be coming back into custody.
incoming.
Is there a warrant?
Yes.
Up to me. He'll probably be RSN.
There was one that just happened in Bennington. He was released on the 23rd, and the 25th they picked him up for a bath.
Was he a parolee?
I don't know. It just
Oh.
said picked up on
Oh,
within
on a warrant?
2 days.
2 days. The cops got called to where he was released to,
Oh, could be.
and he was picked up and held. I think at Marble
That happens quite a bit.
Green.
You don't know if he was one of ours.
I don't. It just said so I'm like, well, he was either a furlough or a parole. I'm not
Did you
sure.
want to review a couple cases?
Well, I wanted to look at the spreadsheet first. Is there any way to shut the chat window on the screen, Coley?
Oh, good. It's not one of mine that's highlighted.
There's
Oh,
not.
sure.
But it is yours.
I see who it is. I said, thanks a lot. I forgot to click something. Okay.
If you can't, that's fine. I didn't know if it shuts. So I did, because we last met in March, I did April and May up until last week.
Yep.
So the first case of it, we do have some discrepancies, so we can review those in just a minute. So if you look, there are blanks. So that's what I'm talking about. It's not that they're completely not filled out. It's when there's blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be letting you know.
Good.
Oh, sure. You
You didn't highlight mine.
I must have unhighlighted
Yeah.
that one because I made that row gray. They're on our main spreadsheet, they're yellow. Or again, if you
What's that for?
put 2 in, try to make sure you uncheck your other box if you're
Yeah.
filling it out ahead of time. But if you look at things are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think May's even better, unless I missed some.
Oh, there's a bright line.
Yeah, that's your day you forgot and you came on and
Oh.
still did hearings.
It's a wicked Wednesday.
And of course, you picked the SDMF Wednesday, our one full SDMF day every month.
I'm gonna pick overflow this week.
I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for everybody to run to Dean and say, "Don't put me on Northern's Wednesday day," because that's all SDMF cases.
Yep.
Maybe
So-
I just want to be a parole violation specialist.
So if you look at May, we had none in May unless I missed some. I did do this at like 9:30 Sunday night. So
No, that looks good.
so I don't know if we want to review those two. Which the first one is Manise. So I can give me a second,
Breaking gift figures.
and I will pull up their SDMF cases because I didn't.
The first one in May, is that the one you're looking at?
No, April.
April.
First one on the whole page.
Oh, yeah, there were 2.
Menza?
Yep.
Sam, Tom, and I.
Sam was wrong.
Sam was wrong.
So neutral, you can't go
Sam's
wrong.
neutral. It's either you or I, Tom.
It's like always and
Hardly ever am I mitigating. I'm
Yeah.
usually neutral or aggravating.
Sam took the easy way out. She
Yeah, I see
neutralized
that.
both
Yeah, I
of them.
got it.
All right. So I stopped sharing. So which one? So we're looking at ability to control behavior.
Mhm.
All right. So ability to control behavior. Dean, you had aggravating, and
Yes.
you put in your notes sexual deviance and alcoholic. And then,
That would be
That's not,
aggravating
that's
to me.
not a clinical diagnosis, just so you know.
and Sam, you had,
That's an SDMF response.
Yeah.
and Sam, you had neutral,
Alcohol use disorder.
spoke about his behaviors in all of the courses he has done. And
Say
then
that, he what? She
He
spoke
spoke about the courses because he did extra classes. So he spoke about his poor,
under ability to control behavior.
We gave him credit for that in programming. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put that there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
well,
have
it's
put.
gonna get better in a second.
Okay.
Ability control behavior mitigating, stated goals and plans regarding behavior.
Great.
Ability to control behavior is a historical domain.
Yeah, that would be in change.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would have put that in change.
So without I can pull up
I would
the,
call that aggravating. He had drug issues.
yeah, but they all have
Sexual.
drug issues.
Yeah, I would have called that aggravating too.
Oh, sure, sign with the chair.
Dean, do you have your notebook out?
But what you wrote in there, I would have put in too, but just.
All
under
right, so
change.
so now I'm gonna have Dean read what aggravating is, because I don't have that up.
Okay. Again, it's historical.
Yeah,
And it's the extent to which an individual reflects poor self-control as indicated by one or more of the self-control factors. That's aggravating. Mitigating is provides long-term goals and is able to explain consequences of actions, displays
See?
pro-social, self-regulating behaviors.
I go back that I'm right. There.
Well, how can you justify it?
Well, I can't remember the case. What I wrote it was programming and things he was doing positively, right?
You
But that's-
stated goals and plans
Right.
regarding behavior.
See? He stated goals, that's why I gave him a mitigating.
And what was neutral?
Neutral is self-control factors do not indicate serious concern for lack of control or confidence or ability to maintain self-control.
I stand more,
That
That's
was-
at the time of the offense. That's the
Okay.
historical one.
right. I don't know.
Without listening to the hearing, this one I don't.
Yeah.
I have to go
Without
back and
listening
look,
to the hearing,
Programming doesn't count for history count.
but
because this
I
one,
would have given him the aggravating.
because there's no, because I just looked at the parole summary real quick and the parole summary doesn't tell you enough.
No, but the stuff in.
No,
italics,
I'm
yeah.
just saying without
Yeah.
without listening to the whole, I mean,
Yeah.
I can pull the audio. and
No,
play
I
it.
would have used Tom's information in the programming component.
I was much more liberal apparently than.
But but the important thing is those first two categories are,
Historical.
Historical.
I think
at
that's
the time-
where-
at the time of the offense.
Yeah.
I think that's where I struggle because we had another case where I had to ask MJ when I was doing the SDMF about the criminal history
yeah.
because they had like 36 pending charges. And that's what I kept wanting to put in there was all of the pending charges. But I think that's where I struggle is it's history. It's not current or future.
Yeah.
But
Okay, well, the other thing, when they don't have, because they're not a listed offender and they're not required to do programming, are we still giving that aggravating? When they haven't had any programming to address
I
their,
haven't figured that one out
yeah,
yet. That one I need to figure out.
because that's when I always struggle with when it's not their fault that they're doing programming, but they have not done any programming to address their need areas. So I've been giving it aggravating because of
So
that.
in neutral, it does say no specific programming was warranted. And many
Right.
times we'll get a response from corrections that because of the length of time this
Right.
person has or whatever, it's not
Mhm.
warranted. So that's neutral. Doesn't mean they don't need it, but
right.
I don't, but it also says they have any program to address their need area, basically.
yeah,
Just because correction says it's not warranted does not mean they don't need it. That's how I interpret it.
yeah.
Because somebody who's in there for the DUI 10 and they only got sentenced for whatever, can't do any programming because their time isn't that, but they still they haven't addressed it. So I always give it an aggravating.
Okay.
Because of that, because it is a need area, they haven't addressed it.
Yeah, I agree. I made a note that if it says programming is to be determined, but they haven't determined it yet, that's aggravating.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Oh, my favorite one is when they say, well, he won't do any programming in the facility. Once he's out, he'll have to do programming, which they don't have in the street.
I would give it aggravating.
I always do, but I always feel kind of bad because it's not his fault. He's there.
Yeah.
It's, the program's not there. Say you don't have to do it, even though he has these need areas. But
Yep.
Offender change?
I don't like this one.
What do you got in there?
Yeah, I
Okay.
struggle with this one too.
Yeah.
that's,
All right.
I use the instinct. No evidence of change.
Okay, hold on.
No evidence of change presented.
So Dean had aggravating, has utilized programming to improve himself and address his risks, not sure he accepts responsibility.
Okay.
I would have put that maybe as neutral.
Sam had neutral, seems to recognize his wrongs and identifies risks in his behavior, spoke about what he learned through programming and how to mitigate the risks.
That's good.
And then Tom had mitigating, involved with COSA, did programs in facility, has plans for programming in community.
Obviously, I have the great answer.
So,
I probably would have gone with neutral.
so in the mitigating, it says the individual expresses realistic plans for ways to avoid criminal behavior, post-relief, work towards pro-social goals. Evidence exists to show the individual successfully completed required programming and is displaying behavior change.
Okay.
Doing COSA and he's doing the other side. I think that
Okay.
he's doing change.
What's aggravating?
Behavior reports and/or individual statements do not indicate that they accept responsibility for their actions. They have set that they have set realistic post-release goals or that they have realistic plans for staying crime-free. Programming reports indicate that the individual failed to attend or attended sporadically, did not actively participate, or did not complete assignments.
Okay, what's neutral?
Neutral is the individual expresses realistic, I'm sorry, that's mitigating. Neutral is, although reports indicate successfully completed required programming, there is no evidence of any change.
Wow.
That's where I think what you wrote for your justification should maybe have been neutral. Right.
I'm struggling with you just hanging on the responsibility piece and not the other aspects, because he did complete programming from the
Yeah.
sounds of it.
There must have been something said in the interview that,
Yeah, because it sounds like you hung on,
Yeah.
your note hung on that responsibility
Right.
piece.
Yeah.
I have to go
I
back
was
and
looking at
listen
his
to it.
usual stuff he was doing and I was more positive, that's all.
And that's a good thing.
See?
This one, I would almost go more neutral, because I don't know if there's an extreme evidence that, yes, he has changed, but I think that he's made his way.
It's like he's done the programming, now he's got to prove it, which is where the neutral would come in.
Or if he said something about it, didn't
Yeah.
amount to anything, and he wasn't
But
taking.
also was going to do the extra because COSA is not something you have to do.
Right.
That's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Any more on that one?
I don't think so.
That's my worst domain.
That's what a mayor.
Is that a hard one to do?
It
Yeah.
is. It's
Well,
the
the
most
next
confusing
one,
for me.
Oh,
Thomas Lawson.
We still in April?
Yep, I'm gonna bring him up. Give me a
On
second.
page 2, the first one on page 2.
Oh, yeah.
Is he a grant?
It's me
Oh,
again,
Granted.
Sam and Wayne.
Oh God, I went mitigating, so I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, go find him in the parolees.
have you been coding it differently with the RSN guys? I have been, and with the community center, whatever that category was with the.
Oh, we should talk about
Because
that.
I've been coding it issues with the community.
So
That
like
one. because RSN is issued.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tom.
Yeah, we should talk about that with the
Yeah.
risk containment and the RSN guys.
I have been coding that one aggravating because they're RSN.
That's good. Call.
All right, Thomas Lawson, institutional community behavior. So it looks like we had Dean with a neutral on community supervision furlough since April of 24, doing well. We had Sam with a mitigating, been in the community for a year and is doing well.
2 out of 3, it can't be
I
wrong.
never do mitigating.
And Wayne with an aggravating, many DRs while incarcerated and 2 VOPs causing return to facility in 2012.
Is he in the community?
Yes, he's in the community, so you gotta consider that.
My understanding is we do the answer to that question based on their current, where their current status.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't go
Yeah.
further back than 2 years.
Right,
That was 1 year.
Most recent
Yeah.
behavior.
right. So if they're incarcerated, it's the incarcerated. If they're on
Right.
furlough, it's what they've done on furlough.
Yeah.
Right?
But if they're on furlough for a
Yes.
month, but they had 5 DRs, I dig them.
Yeah, I do too.
I think I struggle with that too.
2012?
I don't know, what did I write?
Many DRs while incarcerated and 2 VOPs causing return to facility in 2012.
That's
Yeah,
kind of.
that's why I justified what I wrote.
You believe people can change, kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But his most recent behavior in the community was not his DRs. That was on furlough.
So what's the mitigating for that one?
The mitigating is no reports of disciplinary issues plus meritorious conduct that goes beyond and above rule compliance.
Oh, I don't know. about
Never had
that.
anybody with meritorious conduct.
I don't know that.
That's for
I've ever been
institutions.
mitigated.
Right, but
Mitigating for community is no violations in the community, superior compliance with supervision, including program supervision and attendance if appropriate.
Yeah.
Aggravated for in the community is significant violations of supervision, multiple unexcused missed appointments, other behaviors that resulted in problems. And then neutral is generally good compliance in the community, except for an occasional missed appointment or low-level rule transgression that did not result in a remand to custody.
yeah, without knowing all the details, I think you could go anyway.
So you got 2 sets of criteria, one for in the community and one for
Right.
institution. So Wayne used the one for the institution
Yeah.
and we used the one for the
Is it
community.
2 years? You go back or 1 year? I thought we were told by Richard 1 year.
Well, it's not Richard. This isn't Richard. I thought it was no more than 2.
That was 1. That's what I was going by.
1 is fine.
Yeah, that's why
That's what we did. I don't remember.
we must have agreed to that or something.
Yeah.
I think I usually look back about a year.
Yeah, I'll do a
Yeah.
year.
Or
Like if
DR.
there's
So-
DRs more than 1 year, I don't even.
Right,
Consider
that's
that.
true. We don't go back more than 12 months.
Right,
If they're on
right,
community supervision, I just start
Right.
with that. And yeah.
Exactly.
When they're in the community, right there and incarcerated.
Because anything prior to that potentially would fall in the criminal and
Right.
parole history.
Right.
So I could see him being aggravated in the criminal and parole history potentially.
Yeah.
Especially with those BOPs and stuff.
Right. That's where it would be weighted.
Where does it time stamp?
It isn't on there.
I don't think it's on that coding guide, but
No.
I think I gotta go back and check the subsequent manual that I gave you guys, that I think is where it may be timestamped. So I'll double check that for the next one.
Okay. Any others on that? Don't see any.
And that might have been part of a conversation that we had with David Reagan
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Did
so
the
you-
follow.
Yes. Yeah.
That must have been where it was.
Yeah.
Because I've always said 1 year. I never.
So we're now stating it.
Okay,
One.
it's documented. So let's go back to RSN again on that.
Yep.
So we originally had statutory considerations and we removed that domain. So do we want to put RSN cases somewhere else?
Well, and honestly, I don't think RSN is a statutory consideration because it's not in statute. It's a DOC policy. So this is where I struggle is this is a DOC policy. So would this be a case? So with an RSN case, I just want to think about it broadly. What part of an RSN would not be accounted for in the domains? The community sentiment and the victim consideration are two of the ones that I see. The rest of it should be accounted for in the other domains unless there's some unique case factor.
Yeah.
I would think.
Oh, I just remember with RSN and my history, you notify everybody.
Right.
You notify an RSN was a major thing. So as far as community response.
Because there was always a community
Right.
opposition
So,
where it was
exactly.
high profile.
So when I look at that saying that the only domain that would fit would be in that particular one because.
And I think it would also fit in the victim because an RSN may not just be community, it could be a high profile victim case too.
Could be anything.
Right.
They could be somebody who he burned down a building.
Right.
Yeah.
Or had a repeat history.
So would it just fall under community
I
consideration?
think it could fall under community considerations. That's where I was saying, I think you can, if there's a community piece to it, it could fall under the community. If there's a victim piece, it can fall into the victim. And then I think the other aspects are going to fall into your risk-related domains.
So either note it under
Right.
victim or community.
I was
Or both.
Yeah, or both. Maybe
And you may have a case-specific factor depending on if something egregious comes out that something that's really not accounted somewhere else.
I was looking at community because always the RSN was community. That's
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
designation really was. So.
I would just remember they always looked at community and victim
Yeah,
or the
exactly.
two. Those are the two things that they were
Yeah.
looking at. Now I think they're looking at a whole lot
I
more.
think they're looking at everything.
So that's why I don't want to pigeonhole it just to those.
So maybe we'll check both. Don't be neutral anymore. That they're RSN, they'll be maybe victim and
They
community.
could be aggravating. They could be mitigating. Yeah,
They'll be aggravating anyway. You
Right.
can't. That has
Right.
no.
they could be neutral or they could be aggravating depending on.
Yeah.
And I think those two are just going to be. I think it's just going to.
That's usually with RSN. You also usually have a victim. You're right, and
Yeah.
it's always was community.
I think one of the criteria is that it has to be a listed offense.
Oh, it has to be. Oh, yeah, it has to be a
Yeah,
listed
so that's
offense.
the victim crime.
So they should not be in a.
All RSNs have to be a listed
I
offense.
believe
Yeah,
so.
yes, they do. Well, I don't know. We'll see what they have.
I think
It could change.
I could look.
Any other cases?
That's all that was on there for discrepancies.
Okay,
Much better than the last time.
that's good.
Oh, we haven't done the last 2 weeks of May yet, so. I can't wait to see how you guys all scored that in-person record review last.
API recap. So we had an excellent conference in Atlanta, and the three of us went to a bunch of different sessions. So we tried to cover a lot of different areas because they had usually one or two sessions where everybody was together, and then they had breakout sessions with different criteria, and we would kind of split up and do the different ones. But it was, and I attended the chairs conference on Sunday, and MJ did the directors conference on Sunday. So we get to meet with our colleagues from other states. There were 30 chairs there, and there were
And about 20
20
directors.
directors. And,
Nice.
it was very, very well done. Richard was there. A chance to visit with him.
So many other countries there too.
Yeah, a lot of
Nice.
other countries. Yeah. I sat next to a judge who was on the pro board from Australia,
Wow.
from Sydney. Yeah,
It's from
neat guy.
I sat in the back of the room with the director and caused trouble. No, we were gonna cause trouble, but we didn't.
Why were you going to and then change your mind?
Yeah. I would
No,
have
she
known.
just was like, let's sit in the back of the room and be the bad kids and cause trouble back here. I've gotten to be friends with the used to be the New Zealand director too. I love the folks from over there.
Are they much different? Are things much different there? No. Okay. Parole, and we all have the same.
I think that
Problems?
the overarching theme that I kept hearing is public safety.
Yep.
That's the overall overarching theme, the what the boards are really
Most concerned about.
what they're charged with.
Yeah.
In their releasing decisions.
One of the breakout sessions I did was on ICOTS, which was,
Oh,
it's always good to review that process, but one of the things that I took away from that, which was always confusing, is that the sending state does set the conditions.
Huh.
And we had always kind of felt that the receiving state was the one that set the conditions.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it is the sending state that sets the conditions based on the risk. And if the receiving state cannot accomplish those conditions or accommodate them, they don't have to accept them. They can send them back. And then it would be up to us to either modify that or not do it. Now, they can add conditions
I was just
to
gonna
that.
say, can the
Yes.
receiving state
But
set some of
typically,
their
we
own.
always add a special condition that you must abide by.
abide by all the
conditions.
conditions?
But-
Yeah.
But it's up to us to set our conditions based on our risks. So,
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
There are also another thing that came out of that interstate compact one, because we didn't have a lot of overlap in the breakouts, but this is one of the ones we
Yeah.
did. Is that the ICOTS, they're developing a standardized violation matrix because there's a lot of differences between what's a violation in Vermont versus what's a violation
Right.
in another
Yeah.
state.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize, because it always had been my understanding from our ICOTS office, is that we couldn't push back.
right.
Like if we got a violation that asked for retaking, that we couldn't push back, and we're like, well, that's not really a retaking. That's not really a violation here. But it was interesting when it came out that we can push back sometimes.
The receiving state is obligated to tell us if they can't
Right.
enforce any of our conditions, and then we can opt to change those if we want.
Mm.
And then the other thing which we'd kind of run into recently is if there are not new charges that they've been convicted of, not charged with, they can't send them back without a probable cause hearing.
Mm.
So there's no retaking if there's no probable cause unless they've been convicted of a criminal offense.
And I think it may be a felony criminal. That didn't come out, but I think it's the
It could
rule
be a
is a
felony.
felony
Yeah.
criminal offense.
So what happens if we're the receiving state
Mm-hmm.
and the sending state has set conditions
Mhm.
and we want a couple more conditions?
We wouldn't see them.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Who,
DOC deals with all of that.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
And
DOC
they deal,
would look
and
at
if they violate in Vermont, they do the preliminary probable cause hearing. They take care of all of that. It doesn't come before the board.
Okay,
We
even though they're
only-
here on
We
parole.
only deal with the ones we send. We don't
Okay.
deal with the ones that
That's
we
what I
receive.
wondered.
We recently had a case that didn't have a probable cause hearing. From the
Sending state.
Yeah.
I remember that.
receiving
The
state,
receiving state
Yeah.
that sent them
Yes.
back.
right.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we
You're talking
now put,
probable cause hearing in the court or
No.
probable cause for parole violation?
For pro
Who
violation.
holds
Could
that?
be the receiving
It's the
state,
Receiving state.
yeah,
yeah, and that must be documented in there.
before,
They sent them back
They sent them back without doing
without,
that.
without doing that. Yeah.
we fixed that problem.
Oh, good.
So if they violate down in Massachusetts,
Yep.
I've never noticed the pushback on one,
I know.
ever.
There's been a couple that are wishy-washy. There's been a couple that I've been like,
So the state says you're taking him back, whether you like it or not, we're saying, no, we're not.
that's for our compact administrators to
Yeah,
work out.
interesting,
We will take them back because
Right,
We're not-
I've never known us not to.
we will take them back.
Interesting.
But in a lot of cases, we've never set conditions because we figured the
Right.
receiving state was going to.
Right.
which we've now stopped doing. For the most part, I think
Yeah.
we've stopped doing that since we met with Mark.
We had a couple that we were waiting to see if they had the same programs
Yeah,
we had
yeah,
set.
yeah.
I remember those in the past.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
What was interesting, because this was the first time I've ever been, but just hearing, it blew my mind hearing how different states, their practices and how they do things. Because I've only known this and what we do. And
Mhm.
like, what do you mean we all don't do this the same and every, but there were some that just had very little board, but they're like, they don't even hear certain things or do certain things, or they're all administrative, or they don't, it just,
They
That's
do
crazy.
it one-on-one.
Yeah, there was there
Some of them
one
do
state that only
one-on-one.
did life sentence cases or something?
Yeah, that
And
happens, or they have
really?
sex
Yeah.
offenders, or
Yeah.
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 They don't have a pro
percentage.
board for,
or it's the
Everything.
percentage of their sentence. It gets
Yeah.
really complicated in
It's the
some
paperwork, they
states.
do the paper. They don't
Mhm.
see the
Yeah.
person. Just
Right.
the paper, and they look at that and they
That's-
said,
Yeah. And then there were some states, big states that only have like 3 or 4 members. And I'm like,
But they
and I
don't do
remember
that.
asking them, how do you do, how,
They don't do hearings.
No.
and they
Hearing.
said, well, it's full, we're full time.
and
We're
they
full time on staff. And
They don't do hearings.
I was like, I
And
don't
then
know.
there's
do it.
and then there's some that can make a determination to max somebody out. They don't have reviews. Once they
Yeah.
make their decision, they make the decision then if they're gonna have a review or not.
and they can decide whether they are gonna max somebody out.
Yeah, just
Oh.
how they do things differently.
There were a
in
couple of
It's
states
just
too, that
crazy.
if they denied parole, there was no review date set.
And that
They
in
would
Oh.
just essentially sit there and max out.
and it was really good because we had a breakout session, and I'm hoping, actually I need to do this because it's supposed to do this. Quarterly, I will hopefully be getting the Northeast region together, because that's my charge as the regional vice president for APAI, where you all can get on a Teams
Yeah.
meeting together, because it was really helpful. We had New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts,
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, the district attorneys from DC,
Mhm.
or
was a
no,
good
the
group.
public defenders.
Yeah.
We had a really robust discussion about what kind of challenges we're all having. Rhode Island was
Connecticut's
there as
really
well.
struggling.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Connecticut that was really struggling? They were running into some problems.
I don't
I
remember.
don't remember. Connecticut.
I don't
Yes, they were. Yeah, the two from Connecticut. Remember,
Were
there was-
really, they were,
Yeah,
they were having problems with Mandu and remember,
yeah.
and there was one woman on the board who really felt that it affected her ability to make a decision.
yeah.
She
Yeah.
was really nervous about the threats that were made and so forth.
And then New York doing everything paper still. I'm
Yeah.
like,
That's how Georgia does it. I saw them at APPA in January in Vegas, and they have the packet that they send to each individual pro board member, and then each member makes their decision on their own,
Sends it back.
and then they send it back. They see people like once every couple months, but they pick and choose who they see.
Yeah, it just blew my mind to hear all the different
Yeah.
way that they.
Wyoming was very similar to us. They had the same number of board
Yeah.
members, did the same types of hearings.
Wyoming, and I think Iowa.
Yeah.
Might have been Iowa
Yeah.
as well.
Do many of the states see people in person? Or do they do it on Teams or?
The smaller states like us, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of them do the Teams thing too. but
Okay.
Yeah,
A lot of them have been, and then a bunch of them have been made to go back in
Yeah.
person.
They have.
but like Georgia, they don't see people.
No,
Right.
some
Board
states
members.
don't see
Yeah.
people, but the
Right.
ones,
Michigan,
The ones that do, I wondered if they were doing it
Texas.
the way we do it, or if they go in person like we used to.
like New Hampshire's in person.
Florida
But they
doesn't
only
see
take a couple.
anybody.
Well, and then there were some states that do it like on record deliberative sessions. Like
Yeah.
Connecticut.
Yes.
Yeah.
They deliver.
Yeah. I don't
Connecticut
like that.
deliberates right out in the open, and it's like, whew, I don't think I'd want to do that. I know Connecticut, I think was one. I think there
Yeah.
was. another one.
And then there were other states that don't make decisions at the end of the hearing.
They wait.
They write them up later and
Yes.
send them so they don't have to face them.
Right.
One of the breakouts that I went to probably my most fascinating one that I really liked hearing was on juvenile offenders.
Yeah.
And there were 3 people, including, well, no, 4 total with the moderator. They're from the Community Justice Center for Juveniles, and 3 of them were actually convicted at the age of 14 and 15 for life sentences. Life, and then
Yeah.
one of them was actually sentenced to the death penalty at 15.
You go to Concord State Prison, they have a juvenile wing, and I went in there. I rather deal with any maximum security than them. When they open a cell, they have the riot squad there with their shield and their bats, and your custody is determined. Like if you behave yourself, they'll open the slot.
And these are juveniles?
Juveniles. And I talked to the officers, and that's the worst place to work because of the work. I mean, they're just totally, I mean, off the wall, psychotic guys. I mean, they're just crazy. And I said, whenever they have any kind of movement, they have the people there. You put the handcuffs to the back, open the chute, and then but your security's open. Depends on opening your chute is a big thing because they'll give you your food that way and everything else. So your chute can stay open for 2 months. Then you go to the next level. The juvenile. I mean, I've never seen such a place in my life. I was scared. I mean,
I wouldn't want to go.
No,
I wouldn't want to see it.
New Hampshire, Concord State.
It just floored me to
Yeah.
think about, like, and a lot of them were saying when they talked about their crime, and like, I didn't even know really what I was doing at the time, and just went through and how much changes they've made since then, and how they were able to be released and given a second chance, and then it got into the whole discussion about juvenile trauma and ACEs and adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts hardwiring of the brain. And
Weren't there in several states too that had to go back and review, and we're in the process
yeah,
of reviewing all their cases of those under.
yeah, because there are such different
Yeah.
parts of like how their childhood experiences impacted their development, and then how it can change after the age of 25 when your brain becomes fully developed, and with that, so I absolutely love that because I'm a huge advocate for ACEs, and I'm one of the trainers for it in the state of Vermont. So, but it was just so interesting. But I assumed each of these states, they were all going to be from southern states that had the one that was actually given the death penalty was from Pennsylvania, which surprised me.
Yeah.
But they've all 4 of them have gone on to do great things since being released. Yeah, that one was really great.
Well, if anybody has the opportunity to attend these in the future, take advantage of it. They're well done. They put a lot of work into it. So we're kind of up in the air about STMF this fall, but hopefully that will come together.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, we got invited to a SCMF community of practice in August. Dates were unknown. They were supposed to be let out in the end of June. However, they'll be, as of right now, the last communication I saw is that the in-person session will be updated at a later date due to circumstances beyond their control. So I think federal funding had something to do with it. Yeah. So it's just a matter of, as soon as I hear, Katie, Sam, Pat, and I were slated to go. So as soon as I know more, I will pass along the information.
Yeah, I hope they can pull that off.
That's a community where all the states that have adopted it, and I assume New York will be invited.
Yeah.
Because we were invited last time. Because New York sounds like they're still.
But they actually came to ours too.
Yes, because they were trying to sell it to them.
Yeah.
That's why we went to New York.
Is Robbie Braxton still involved?
Yep, Robbie is. I think all she's doing is STMF. I believe. That's all she's focused on now at NIC is SDMF.
Good. Anything else on the conference, guys? Good. Thanks. June schedule? Who's going, not going? What are your dates? Sam?
Dean, you're doing Wednesday, June 4th.
Yep, I got it. I talked to Pat.
That's the only day that I'm not available is June 4th. Other than that, I'm available.
What's our 2 hour?
So if we have, if we have enough people on to allow it, that first week in June, that 3rd, 4th, and 5th,
Okay,
our clinic is opening that week. So
you like that week off?
if I could be there full time, like every day while we're opening our clinic, that would be helpful. But if you need me one of those days, just let me know.
Okay. Otherwise, the rest.
Otherwise, just put me on
Okay.
wherever, because now with this new job, he said
You work around your schedule.
he'll work around it, but
Okay.
he didn't ask me to take that week, but I just know that week's going to be crazy trying
Sure.
to get the clinic open that week. So
Okay. Tom?
June 5th, I'll be working with 60 volunteers in the GE Veterans Group. So, on the cemetery. So
Okay.
that's the only day,
Okay.
June 5th.
Wayne?
Wide open as far as I know right now.
Okay. And Pat, I got yours. Okay.
and we're not
Oh.
worried about the Harley one
So-
anymore, right? For me, but
I'm
for
looking over,
March.
I'm looking over Sam's shoulder. There is one change for June. There is no overflow day
Right.
because St. J has been moved to June 26th because June 19th is now Juneteenth and DOC does not, DOC has a,
That's it off.
DOC, Carla and Colby have that off.
Right,
Oh,
because the
MJ's choosing to work?
No, exempts do not have that day
no,
off.
the corrections bargaining. The
but
corrections bargaining
I have Battle of Bennington
Right,
And we
day
don't.
out and they don't.
because.
You lost our Bennington
that
battle
weird?
day.
Oh, no,
And-
Yeah, but you gained
it's
June
the
19th.
corrections unit
But did you
negotiated
also
for 2
gain
days
Columbus
off.
Day too?
I don't know, did
And one
we?
of them was the June.
Maybe.
I'm
I don't
pretty sure
remember.
they.
I don't
I'm
know.
pretty
I
sure
put
they-
it in my calendar
sorry,
and then
I think
you
you
remind me.
gained Indigenous People Day. It's not. Columbus
correct.
Day. I have to be
Okay.
correct. I have to be.
They got that correct because they gave up Bennington Battlefield Day, which I would never have given up.
Yeah.
But they gave the former Columbus Day, and now they have the
Which used to
Juneteenth.
be a floater.
Right, which we had to give up years ago, but that's different. But they gave up Bennington Battlefield Day.
Which was nice to have a day off in August.
Yeah.
Honestly, I put it in my calendar and then you remind me the Friday before because even in my calendar, I still try to work that day.
I was doing negotiating. I said, we'll give up Christmas before we give up Battlefield Day. I told them. It's a moral holiday.
Bennington Battle
I
Day,
told
I
them
get
that.
the day before, the day after Christmas off. Like we get Black Friday off, the day after Thanksgiving, which helps with travel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would give up another holiday to have the day before Christmas or the day after off.
Yeah.
We only get 6 holidays.
Yeah.
Only 6.
You don't want it on a Friday or
You
a
guys
Monday?
don't adopt the state holidays
That's horrible.
that
No,
way?
because we get more paid time off.
Oh,
We get
okay.
more CPO time.
Got it.
But Juneteenth is Braxton's first birthday, so I'm not gonna complain.
Yeah.
So our staff meeting next month is the 24th.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Anything else from anybody? Think we're good. Thank you.
Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.